I have finally played 100% of SilkSong. Now when I say 100%, what I mean is 100% in-game completion. I still haven't beaten the game on Steel Soul mode, and I still haven't beaten the game in under 30 hours obtaining 100% completion. If this video does well, if there is a demand, I will go ahead and attempt to do those challenges. So what is 100% in-game completion? It's basically eliminating every single boss in the game, unlocking all of the endings, getting all of the mask shards, getting all of the silk stools, learning all of the transversal abilities. And in this video you're going to see a full breakdown of how I do that. Now this is a very long video, and the reason why it is so long is because I showcase every single boss battle. Now I won't be showing the failed attempts, trust me, there were many. It took me almost 80 hours to 100% this game. What you will see is the successful attempts of all of these boss fights. There's many boss fights in the game. Each fight is absolutely amazing. So we start off imprisoned. A butterfly lands on top of the carriage. That awakens Hornet. She uses her incredible sync abilities, breaks out of the cage, and here we are in the fabulous Moss Grotto. Now I am an avid fan of the first Hollow Knight game, and I know how these developers work. I know there's going to be secret rooms in every nook and cranny in these maps. Now I can say from experience, and believe me, I have fully completed the first Hollow Knight game. This is a much harder game. I think when the developers first started making this game, they made it with the intention that it was going to be an original Hollow Knight DLC, so it was going to be a step up in terms of difficulty. After a nice stroll through the Moss Grotto, we finally come across our very first boss fight. And this one is known as the Moss Mother. This is the first of many variants that we get to fight, and this, by far, is the easiest one. This is a nice introduction to the boss fights in SilkSong. There are many. There's well over 40 or 50 bosses in this game. This fight is geared towards you learning how to move Hornet around, how to jump, how to attack in the air, how to attack upwards and downwards, how to regenerate silk and to heal when you're in the middle of battle. So all of those things will need to be mastered if we're going to conquer all of the bosses in this game. Once we beat the Moss Mother, we attempted to move out of the Moss Grotto and move on, but our character fainted from exhaustion. We were waken up by our pretty cool NPC here by the name of Sharma. Now this game, unlike the last one, has huge amounts of NPCs within it, lots of people you can talk with, lots of wacky bugs we get to meet. This one is called Chapel Maid. Now the Chapel Maid will play a very important role later on, but for now, she will give us our first great objective, which is to get up into the Great Citadel to find out why we were captured in the first place. So there's a bit of a mystery there as well. So now we're going to make our way into the very first town, and the map here is called Farloom. This place is called Bone Bottom, and this place has a bench that we can sit on. Now the benches are very important for those of you who are brand new to this game. You sit on the bench, which will serve as a checkpoint, but also it will fully heal us. The merchant had lots of useful wares for us. The simple key will allow us to open up a door that will bring us into a new zone. Normally you get really nice stuff in there. There was a mask shard as well. If we can get our hands on 4 mask shards, our maximum health will increase. And there was a couple of other handy tools there as well. Now this game doesn't work the same way as the first Hollow Knight. We don't have charms in this game. Instead, we have tools. And I can tell you right now, some of the tools you can get in this game are absolutely insane. Now this is our first gauntlet battle here, and these will happen occasionally where we will be traversing through a level, doors will close, and we will have to fight a huge array of enemies before we can progress further. The first gauntlet was easy enough. They do get, some of them anyway, are excruciatingly hard. Now we need to use rosaries, which is the primary currency of this game, to unlock most of the benches and the fast travel stations that the game has to offer. Unfortunately, rosaries at the beginning of the game are hard to come by because they primarily only drop off humanoid enemies. So a lot of the beastly bugs you fight in this game won't drop rosaries, they'll drop shards instead. Now you need shards to use your tools. And what happens to me a lot is that I die so much on bosses, I run out of shards, so I have to fight bosses with just my needle and my wits. So we came across a flea caravan here, and just like finding the grubs in the first Hollow Knight, we have to find fleas in this one. There's well over 30 fleas we have to find. We also come across a new NPC here by the name of Chakra. Now Chakra is a warrior seeking her master who vanished under strange circumstances. So we will find her in a lot of the zones where we can purchase maps off her, and maps are absolutely necessary if we're going to explore every nook and cranny in this game. Now once we're finished with purchasing some stuff off Chakra, I decided to farm these humanoid enemies just for the small bit to get some more rosaries so we can buy some more things off Chakra here. I wanted to get the compass because with this I can see where I am on the map, so it becomes very easy to get to places that you haven't already been. I also picked up a shard pendant there too. Now all of the tools in this game have all different purposes. The shard pendant, for example, will increase the amount of shards you get from slaying monsters that drop shards, which are most of the monsters in the game. I also picked up a core commandment there as well, and eventually we can give that to an NPC to get back lots of rosaries. We also found a shrine where we learned our first silk skill, and this is the silk spear. Now we can have, I believe, up to 5 silk skills in this game, but you can only equip one at a time. So for now it's just a silk spear. We came across a new NPC called the Moss Druid. Now this guy will give us a quest called berry picking. We need to go and find 3 moss berries. Now we picked up a few at the start in Moss Grotto, and we just picked up another one right beside where this guy is located. Once we gave him the 3 berries, we completed the wish and we get a reward. And all of the wishes in this game, well, most of them will give you back something useful. So we just got the Druid's Eye there. And the Druid's Eye basically gives you back some silk every time you take a couple of hits. It was now time to fight another boss. Now as far as I know, you can't get past this location without fighting this boss. So you had to pick up the silk spear before you can progress the main story. I'm sure there's speedrunners out there that can get around this, but this is a 100% playthrough, so we will be experiencing everything. Now this boss is just another example here of jumping at the right moment, hitting at the right moment, and healing at the right moment. This boss will basically charge at you, or it will try to jump on your head. Both moves are quite well telegraphed and they can be dodged easily enough. This fight, like many fights in this game, it's all about patience. You just cannot be greedy when it comes to additional damage. Now most of the attacks that you will come across in this fight will deal 2 masks of damage, not 1, so just prepare yourself for that. Now this fight, in all fairness, if you compare it to the rest of the fights in the game, it's pretty standard. It's another nice tutorial fight, and we got an achievement for doing that fight as well. More importantly, we're going to pick up our very first silk heart. Now there's up to 3 silk hearts you can get in the game, and every time we get one, our silk regeneration gets increased. That means every time we strike an enemy with our needle, we will get more silk, and that's very important because silk is used to use our special abilities, such as the silk spear. It's also used to heal our character. After the fight was over with the Bell Beast, it came back up out of the ground to say, "Thank you very much, you can now use me as a fast travel station." So every time we enter into a new zone, chances are there will be a fast travel station that we can unlock by paying some rosaries. Fast travel stations are vital when it comes to 100% in this game, because we're going to find ourselves back in these previous zones over and over again when we obtain new transversal abilities. So we just hit a switch there and this activated a cool looking bell. There's 5 of these in total that we get to activate, and there's a reason for that I won't spoil for you right now. So we're still making our way through the marrow. I came across a little room here. Once I hit that little fireball on the wall there, it set off a chain reaction. It was worth the effort though, because as a reward we got a craft metal. Craft metals are needed to trade into vendors to get back tools for the most part. So you need the craft metal plus the rosaries. All of the maps that we get to explore in this game are filled up with shortcuts. So sometimes you might be going through a very difficult zone, and the great thing about it is that most of the time when you reach the end of that very tough gauntlet, there will be a nice shortcut you can activate so you won't have to go through it again. We freed a very interesting NPC here by the name of Grindle, and Grindle becomes a very important NPC that we can buy tools from later on in the game. Speaking of tools, we're going to get our first offensive tool right now, which is the straight pin, and this is something that I do use in a lot of the boss fights before I get my hands on more of the advanced tools. There's well over 50 tools that you can get in this game. Each one has a unique function. To 100% complete the game, we need to find all of the tools. We're now in the next area, the deep docks. Now this area is dominated by lava, and this is something that you do not want to get hit by. I found a room here off to the side of the main transversal path, and it led me to this little gauntlet where we just had to jump from rock to rock, avoid the lava, and we managed to get a flea right at the very end. Now once you rescue a certain amount of fleas, you will get some very nice prizes off of the NPCs at the flea caravan. I was also purchasing some pins here from Chakra as well. I really wanted the Bellway pin, which is the fast travel one, and the bench pin. It just makes it very, very easy to get back to those locations when you can clearly see them on your map. This game is way bigger than the previous Hollow Knight game. It's absolutely huge. So getting my hands on all of the pins sooner rather than later was going to save me a lot of time when it comes to pinpointing down certain NPCs or certain locations that I want to get back to. So this was just another gauntlet that I finished here, and all of these enemies were quite tough to deal with. I also came across another very interesting NPC here by the name of Forge Daughter, and just like all of the other storekeeper NPCs, she sells a big array of tools. She also sells the valuable crafting kit. Now the crafting kit will increase the damage done by our tools, and there's a total of either 4 or 5 crafting kits that you can get in this game. So we absolutely want to get our hands on all the crafting kits so we can maximize the damage that our tools dish out. A lot of fights in this game will demand the proper use of tools to complete. Good luck trying to needle your way through this game, no pun intended, without the use of tools. This was another fun little gauntlet where we just had to jump on the steps, but we can't stand on them for too long or we'll take damage. We just got our first silk spool there. There's a total of 18 silk spools I believe we get to find throughout the game. Every time we find 2, our silk bar just at the top left side of the screen there becomes a little bit bigger. So we now rest on a bench and we equipped those tools that we can use now. So we have the straight pen and we have the druid's eye. This gauntlet was actually quite tough. Took me a few goes to get it. Those ants are quite the ferocious enemies. Once we beat the gauntlet, we got our hands on another silk skill. This one is the ability to dash. It's called a swift step. In my opinion, this is where the game really ramped up in terms of difficulty. Because we now had this dash ability, all of the bosses will require us to use this a lot. So the fights now become much faster, much more aggressive. So as we make our way through the deep docks, we're just trying to find more goodies here. Fleas, masks, silk spools, along with a nice boss encounter. Now this boss is known as Lace, and Lace plays a very important part in this game. We will end up fighting Lace a couple of times. The first encounter is simple enough. Now this boss has one devastating ability, and that is a parry. If we hit the boss at the wrong moment, she will counter-attack and deal huge amounts of damage to us. Now the main story in this game is quite interesting. I just don't want to spoil a whole lot of it right now. But Lace is someone that does not want to see us reach the top of the Citadel. She does not want us to find out why we were captured. So she wants to stop us here. She wants to end our journey. Now this fight is pretty cool in the fact that if we stun her enough, we can knock her back and throw her into the lava. I don't know if she takes extra damage when she falls into the lava, but it is pretty cool when she does fall in. Now this fight is much faster than any of the other fights I've done so far. The best way I found dealing with Lace was to just wait until she done an attack. Once she was finished with her attack, strike her straight after and then create some distance. Once the fight was finished, we were able to move on into the next zone where more goodies awaited us. Welcome my friends to the Farfields. Now this place is very tame compared to the previous zones we have explored. A lot of the enemies here are fairly simple to deal with. It doesn't get excruciatingly hard until you get into the likes of the Hunter's March or other zones adjacent to this one. Now we're going to pick up a new power-up ability here quite soon, but first we're going to do some exploration and we're going to try our best to grab as many of the goodies as possible with the very limited transversal skills we have right now. The Warding Bell tool is nice. It gives us a little bit of a shield every time we try to get off a heal, so it just makes healing a little bit more easier if you're in the midst of battle. There was a big house here in the Farfields. The seamstress is the main NPC we need to talk to push the main quest forward. Flexible spines is the wish that we need to get done here, and the completion of this quest is quite simple. We have to collect spine cores, and the only way to get these is to strike those enemies and then they will retaliate with spine cores. Once those spine cores hit the ground, we can strike them with the needle, thus collecting them. Once we have enough spine cores collected, we can then bring them back to the seamstress, and she is going to conjure up a pretty cool cloak that we get to wear that's going to give us the ability to float. And we won't just have the ability to float, we'll also have the ability to catch air currents that would propel us high up into the air. So there's actually a lot we can do with this. The Drifter's Cloak is something you don't get in the first Hollow Knight game, so it was real nice to see the developers giving us new transversal skills in this one. The great thing about this game is that you're going up, where if you played the first Hollow Knight game, you're trying to get down, you know, into the bowels. After doing some more exploration, I came across another little challenge area here. We had to strike all those little fire nodes. We eventually managed to get a current that brought us right up to strike the last node to break the ground open, revealing our very first mask shard of the challenge. Many more mask shards to find. We also picked up a bone scroll as well, and that can be handed into an NPC later on for some money. It was now time for the next big main boss, and this one is known as the 4th Chorus. Now the fight is simple enough. The boss literally only has a handful of attacks. The boss will try to break the ground, limiting the amount of room we have to move around. But the ground does regenerate itself, so don't panic. Occasionally, the boss will use his bottom left or right arm to swipe across the screen. That's easy avoidable, you just have to jump over it. What you really have to watch out for is the top arms, because they try to break the ground all the time. During its transitional phases, it'll start hitting the ceiling and all those debris of fire will fall down. That's actually a great opportunity strike the boss repeatedly. When it comes to difficulty in this game, this was one of the more easier fights, you know. I think the biggest reason for this fight was just to get you used to that Drifter's Cloak ability you just picked up. So you can also think of this fight as a bit of tutorial, you know. Once that fight was over with, it was onwards and upwards to get into new zones and explore new wonders. During my way up, I noticed a sign there for the fast travel station. When I went into the room, this is just going to be a classic experience for most people to play this game. I found a fast travel station and a bench that I couldn't unlock because I just didn't have enough rosaries to get it done. You see, I don't know about other people playing this game, but what happens to me a lot is I die over and over again. I end up losing all of my rosaries, so when I do come across a bench or a fast travel station or something like that, I can't unlock it. I am forced to go back and grind out an area filled up with humanoid mobs to get rosaries to get that done. So it's one of the mechanics I just didn't like about this game, but everything else I absolutely loved. Don't get me wrong, folks, this is an amazing experience. Everyone needs to experience the beauty of this game. Now, as we progress through the main quest and as we get higher and higher and higher, sometimes I stop and I go back, especially if I pick up a few new abilities like climbing up walls, double jumping, super jumping up into the air. You just have to go back and re-explore all of the previous areas. You'll be very surprised the things you end up finding. So at the moment we have the Bone Bottom, the Marrow, Deep Docks and Farfields all unlocked. We're going to go back to Bone Bottom and look what has popped up. A lovely wish board. We have Garb of the Pilgrims and Bone Bottom Repairs. Now the Garb of the Pilgrims is a very simple quest to do. We just have to wipe out some humanoid enemies until they drop enough garbs for us to complete that wish. The Bone Bottom Repairs was an easy quest because we had lots of shards collected from enemies. And we're now going to jump into this lift that we activated previously, and we're going to head back up here and we're going to try to get over into a new zone because we now have the ability to dash. Now just so everybody knows, I was not following a guide going through Act 1 and Act 2 and most of Act 3. I only pulled up guides at the very end when it comes to finding the last couple of tools that I missed or the last couple of mask shards, because for the life of me I just couldn't find them on my own. So all of this is just new to me. I came across a door after running away from that monster that needed a simple key. So that is one door I now know of that can be opened once I obtain a key. I also found a mask shard down here as well, which was nice. Just 2 mask shards to go and my maximum health will be fully increased. Getting used to that Silk Spear was such a cool ability. Now I have to be honest, I much prefer the lovely Shade Soul that you had in the first game. The Silk Spear is much more difficult to land on enemies, but by god does it do a lot of damage. Because we had the compass and the map of this area, it was real easy to look at zones we haven't been yet in the Mara. It's just a simple case of going back, re-exploring these places, freeing more fleas, and stocking up on rosaries and other items that you're going to need going forward. Now, I made a huge mistake in this playthrough and my ego ends up getting the better of me. It's a very bad habit, and it's something that cost me a lot, I mean a lot of time. See, when you first come to the lovely Mara, you can actually fight this little mini-boss here. And you can actually kill him without the dash, but it's just very, very hard to do so. If you beat this enemy, you will get access to a new location called the Hunter's March. It's an area you don't need to explore until much later on in the game. Now, I fought this mini-boss over and over and over again until I finally won. And I thought something real good was going to be on the other side of that locked door. I didn't get a prize, instead what I got was an experience. That's right, I'm going to be a little bit optimistic here and I'm going to sum it up to the word experience. Lots of experiences were had inside this zone. Look, to be fair, this zone almost broke me. It almost ruined my lovely SilkSong experience. I mean, just take a look at all of this transversal here. And these are the successful attempts, okay? The amount of times I failed doing those attempts and ended up crashing through spikes was just insane. This gauntlet was extremely hard. Thankfully, you're joined by your good friend Chakra, who lends a hand, and she ends up one or two shotting a lot of these enemies because she just throws her rings at them. So when it comes to doing this gauntlet, the best advice I can give you is to prioritize survival. Just let Chakra deal with these enemies. Now, I died at the very end of the gauntlet, but at the same time the last enemy also died. So when I went back to get my cocoon, look what happened. The door was open, I could progress. Was I going to get a great prize at the end of this gauntlet? No. Instead, I was going to get another experience. There's a boss that resides in this location, and oh my god, do not fight this boss. I repeat, do not fight this boss at the beginning of the game. Come back here when you have a stronger weapon, more health, more transversal abilities. Do not come in here now like I did. This is the Chapel of the Beast. There is a boss here called the Savage Beastfly, and it was one of the hardest encounters I ever experienced in any game that I have played. And what makes the fight so hard isn't the boss itself, or not even the ads it summons, it's the fact that the arena you're given is just tiny. It's a small little box that you get to move around in. Hours upon hours were wasted by me coming back here to fight this savage beastfly over and over again. Now, I did get real good at harness by the time I beat this horrendous looking fly. I got very good at gauging the distance between my attacks and the enemy. I got very good at pogoing off the tops of enemies. I also got very, very good at running back from the bench to this boss fight. Now, here is just a very, very small example of some of the deaths that were occurred when I was fighting this boss. Eventually, I turned the game off, took my dog for a walk, had a little bit of a nap, had something to eat, and I came back with a clear mind. I knew what I had to do to achieve victory. I needed patience. I kept having to tell myself this was not a DPS race. There was no timer here. This boss wasn't going anywhere. All I had to do here was keep my distance, strike when the boss came in range, strike when I had the opportunity to do so, and wipe out the ads as soon as they spawned in. Now, sometimes you can get the boss to destroy the ads if he charges down upon you. That can be quite challenging though, especially with that ground ad because spikes come out of it. Now, it is much better to get hit with the ground ad than it is to get hit with the boss. The boss will give you 2 points of damage where the ad will just do 1. Now, the boss can summon up to 3 ads. I got very lucky here and the boss never summoned the big flyer ad, which releases huge amounts of blades when you get close to it. I just got huge amounts of small little ads, and that was the main reason I was able to beat this fight. Sometimes, especially in the early days when you fight flying type enemies, they can be quite difficult. So we finally get the big prize. What we're going to get here is a crest, and there's many crests you can get in this game, and a crest changes the way that your attacks work. So it changes the way your downward strike works. It changes the way your regular attacks work. But most importantly of all, it changes the way your circle ability works. Now, when I say circle ability, I'm talking about when you press circle on the PlayStation controller. So with this Beast Crest, when you press circle on the PlayStation controller, when you go to heal yourself, instead you activate an ability where you get health based on the amount of hits that you have dealt to an enemy. Now, I tried the Beast Crest for a little bit and I decided that I just didn't like it. I much preferred to heal outside of combat rather than heal in the midst of combat. So I just completed a quest there by giving in some garbs that I got from wiping out lots of humanoid bugs. With the money I got, I purchased another mask shard from the good old bug there in Bone Bottom. It was then time to progress with the main story. So we're going to use our Drifter's Cloak here and we're going to head up into a new area called Greymore. Now, after my numerous attempts with the savage beastfly, I was convinced there was no other boss in this game that would give me the level of trouble that boss gave me. And you know what? There wasn't. All of the other boss fights in this game were quite fair. Saying that though, the beastfly is optional and you can go back and fight it anytime you want in the entirety of the game. I also forgot to mention too that obviously we all know when we die we lose our rosaries. And if we strike the cocoon on our way back, we get the rosaries back. But we can also put our rosaries up into strings. And sometimes merchants will do that for you. Sometimes you can come across machines that will do that for you as well. And it's just a good way to keep all of your rosaries saved up in strings, because if you die you won't lose the stringed up rosaries. And you can break apart the strings anytime you want to get those rosaries back. So we just picked up a new wish here called Bugs of Farloom, and we also got the Hunter's Journal. This journal will keep track of every single enemy that we fight and kill. There is an achievement to max out that journal. Fortunately for us, we don't need to max it out to get 100% in-game completion. We do, however, need to complete every wish in the game. So we just done another gauntlet fight there. Now this area of Greymore is quite a big open area. We do end up coming back here on tons of different occasions with new transversal abilities, getting more goodies as we go. That NPC up there, his name is Garmond. He is a fair cool NPC and we will be seeing a lot more of him later on in the challenge. So I just broke open a rosary string there because I needed 80 rosaries to unlock the Greymore fast travel station, and that's something we want to unlock as quickly as possible. I found another secret here by breaking open a wall. Breakable walls are littered all over the place. Now these enemies can be quite tough. If they hit us, they will deal 2 masks of damage. Now this is a fairly small zone, okay? We also got a memory locket there as well, and the memory locket is used to unlock more slots with whatever crest we have equipped it. We are now engaging Morwing, and we have to beat Morwing if we want to get access to the next area of the game, and the next area is quite the interesting area indeed. It's called Bellheart. But for now, let's focus on this fight. Now this is a very hard fight, especially for people that are new to this game, like me at the time. The boss has a lot of abilities where you have to react very quickly or you're going to take some serious damage. Now I fought this boss before the developers went and nerfed the game. Every single attack I take from this boss will deal 2 masks of damage, so you can die very quickly. The trick to beating this boss, again, is patience. Wait for the boss to attack, dodge the attack, strike the boss once or twice. Do not get greedy because you will get punished for it, and eventually the boss will go down. You've probably also noticed as well that I haven't really been using my tools. That's a habit from playing the first Hollow Knight game. To be honest, most of the time I just forgot that I had access to tools. But that changes down the road. Eventually, we heavily rely upon our tools. So when we got to Bellheart here, we've noticed all of these lovely bugs are all stringed up. We need to find the root of the cause in the attempts to free all of these bugs so we can access all of the lovely features this town has to offer. Now, there's only one place you can kind of go from here, and that is the next location, which is called Shellwood. Now just like all of the other maps that we've been in so far, Shellwood has its fair share of goodies to collect, NPCs to talk to, and abilities to pick up. Now we get some very nice abilities here, and once we unlock some of those abilities, we can go back to all of the previous maps and do further exploration. A lot of the enemies here are flying type enemies, so if you're not a fan of flying enemies, you will absolutely not like this place at all. Now you do get an ability later on that makes flying enemies much easier to deal with, but I won't spoil it for you just now. But just so you know, at the end of this game, our character ends up becoming a murder hornet, not just a regular hornet. So we just got the long ping tool right there, and that is something I don't really use. It's similar to the straight pen, except it's much heavier, but it deals more damage once we make contact on enemies. So this is just another wave of enemies we have to fight here in this gauntlet. They were simple enough to kill. Once those enemies were defeated, we're going to get a very nice shortcut here. So if we keep going right, there's a big pedestal here we get to jump on, and that's going to open up a door. So if we die later on in this zone, it's not going to take us long to get back where we left off. And that's what I love about all these maps. It's all of the shortcuts we get to unlock. Now I ended up leaving Shellwood here by accident. I didn't know I was going to leave the place. I ended up again in Bone Bottom, and then from there I ended up in a new location known as the Worm Ways. Now as you can see, worms literally fly out from the ceiling onto the ground, and we also have worms that pop up from beneath the ground as well, and they'll try to eat our legs. But this place, just like all of the other maps, are full of lovely goodies, and there's a very interesting NPC we can find here as well. Now as we progress through the Worm Ways, we can hear the lovely music of Chakra, so I did try to find her so I can get myself a map so I can be able to traverse this place way better. I also found a lever as well that I pulled, and when I pulled the lever I very quickly realised where I was. I was back at the door that was locked. We needed a simple key to unlock it. There was also a few other zones we can kind of get in here too. I noticed a fly up at top there that had a flea in its mouth, so that was one more flea rescued. There was also more little wishes here on the wish board that we get to accept. So we donated all of the shards first of all, and we completed the wish, a life-saving bridge. We also took on a quest as well. We had to track down several enemies and eliminate them. There's a huge amount of wishes in this game where you have to track down something and either fight it, or you have to track down an NPC and protect them from enemies. But most of the quests that revolve around tracking always end up as a fight. So we're going to go back to Mushka here because we found more than 5 fleas, and that completed another wish. And because we have found huge amounts of fleas, we get to travel in the caravan with them to their next location. And this will happen a few times before they finally reach their cool flea home, which they will call Fleetopia. So we just got a new tool there from helping them out called the Flea Brew, and this will increase our movement speed as well as our attack speed. It was then back to Greymore to do some more exploration. I came across an enemy here with a giant scissors. I found the best way to deal with these enemies was to wait for it to attack and then jump behind it and hit it a couple of times. Rinse and repeat, and they went down fairly simple enough. I came across another chapel. Now this wasn't Chapel of the Beast, this was Chapel of the Reaper. Now when I entered into this zone, because it said chapel, I literally started getting the shivers because I thought it was going to be another experience like that of the savage beastfly, but it wasn't. It was just a handful of enemies that I was able to dispatch easy enough using the abilities and tools that I had at my disposal. And just like all of the other chapels in this game, we're going to pick up a crest here called Crest of the Reaper. And just like the Crest of the Beast, this is going to change the way our primary attacks work, and it's also going to change up how we heal ourselves. So the Reaper quest is pretty cool, is that when we heal ourselves for a couple of seconds when we deal damage to enemies, we can get additional silk from them. I also went back to Deep Docks because I had some rosaries and I purchased a few things here. I wanted to get everything this merchant had to offer, but I only had 288 rosaries. I did have 2 craft metals though, so if I wanted to get on the tools right now I could have. I purchased the crafting kit because I wanted my tools to do more damage. I also found Chakra back up in Greymore as well, and this is the great thing about the fast travel. I can very easily jump from zone to zone using the Bell Beast. So it's very easy to get around the game, you know. So if I wanted to go back to the Marrow or Bone Bottom or to the Far Fields, I can just jump into a fast travel station and away I go. So when we first got to Greymore, we took a left and we ended up in Bellheart. We now are taking a right and we're fighting these funky looking birds, and all of these bird enemies are quite challenging. They're very difficult to deal with because they all have the ability to fly to dash at you and to assault you from the ground as well. Now this gauntlet I did here was grueling. It took me about 10 attempts to actually get through it. Eventually we got there. It took a lot of patience, a lot of waiting around. This is the first fight where I really started to use my tools. I really started to throw my pins to deal damage from distance. And when I finished this fight, I then realized how handy tools actually were, how powerful my tools actually were. So from this moment and onwards, I ended up using my tools a lot more in combat, and not just for bosses, but from dealing with regular enemies as well, especially flying type enemies. Greymore was now filled up with these big balloons that we could jump off to access new areas. I also activated a big bell here as well, and that's another bell of the 5 bells you need to get up into the Great Citadel. Now just so everyone knows, you don't need to go do that gauntlet to get access to that bell. And I learned that when I played this game the second time round. I was trying to speed run it. You can actually get that bell if you get a certain ability that you unlock in the Shellwood area here. So if you really hate that gauntlet, if you don't want to experience it, you don't have to. Once you get a certain transversal ability, you can more or less make your way up to that bell without too much hassle. So we finally got another mask shard, and that increased our maximum health, which was nice. We're just doing more transversing here now through Shellwood. Lots of fleas to find here, lots of goodies to get, including the polyp heart. Now, there's 5 or 6 of those we have to get, but the prize we get for giving those into the NPC is well worth the effort. Well worth it. We end up getting a tool that I use for more or less the entirety of the game. Now, I end up fighting a boss here, and once this boss has been defeated, we get one of the coolest abilities in the game. This boss is known as Sister Splinter. Now, to be fair, it only took me 2 attempts to down this boss. I just didn't seem to have a whole lot of problems with it. A lot of people complained about the difficulty of this boss on Reddit, but I just don't understand why. The boss is fairly simple. I think for a lot of people, the big reason was the ads that the boss was spawning in, because the ads were hitting for big damage as well. But the trick about this boss is to save your silk for the ads. Once the ads come down, just hit him with a silk spear, or if you can bring him into the boss's range, the boss will wipe the ads out with her big claws. Every time the boss fell onto the ground, instead of doing extra damage, I took that time to heal myself. And because I was using the crest of the Reaper, every time I healed myself, I was given a good couple of seconds to get in some extra strikes, so I was getting extra soul off the boss, and that extra soul was helping me to keep up my strong attacks, such as the silk spear. So every time those ads came down, I could eliminate them very quickly. Once Sister Splinter was eliminated, we could explore the rest of the Shellwood area. Now, you're not given the rewards straight away, you have to do a little bit of transversal. The other great thing about the crest of the Reaper is that your downward strike makes it really easy to pogo off things. So we're now going to get another big transversal silk skill here, and this one is the Cling Grip. This means we can now climb up most of the walls in the game. So you now know what that means, right? We can go back to the starter zones if we wanted to and explore the absolute crap out of them. So once we got the Cling Grip, there was a lot of things we had to do around Shellwood. I wanted to get all of the polyp hearts, so I complete the quest given by an NPC we get to meet later on. I also found a zone just after the big bench that we activated with a fake wall that we get to destroy. Once these walls were destroyed, I entered into an area here that was just filled up with bells. And there was also some new enemies in here as well that would pop out of the ground. There was also fleas inside here too that we got to rescue as well, which was nice. Once we're finished with this area, there is going to be one of the coolest boss fights in the game coming up. There's many bosses in this game, but this fight really had an impression on me. It is such a cool fight. Before we go and fight that boss, the first thing we're going to do is activate a shortcut right back to the bench. Because if we die, and trust me, this boss killed me a lot before I mastered the art of dodging all of its attacks and finally getting that lovely kill on it. You really want to be activating this shortcut because it just means you don't have to go back to that bell infested zone. You can go straight from the bench here right back to the boss in mere seconds. You know, I'm talking about a minute or less, easily enough. The boss we're going to fight now is called Willow, and this is one of the most interesting boss fights you're going to come across in this game. And you also get some very interesting dialogue here as well. So when you do talk to this boss before you fight it, you do get the gist of why you were captured in the first place. So one of the dialogues here says that you are a rare birthling, a precious child of Rim and Weaver. We are also the spawn of those who dared to flee home, but we have found our way back home at last. So this location here, this map of Fardum, this is a place where Hornet's parents used to reside, but they didn't like it here after a while and they wanted to leave. They wanted to get out of Dodge. And just take a look around, I wonder why. So this is one of the first encounters going to come across where the fights are much more fast paced. Willow here is going to throw all sorts of different attacks at you. Most of the attacks are fairly well telegraphed, and after a couple of attempts on this fight, you'll be able to dodge most of what she actually dishes out. What you really have to watch out for here is that when the bells hit the ground, they will occasionally bounce back up and hit the ground again. So the bells are something you do not want to get hit with. Now more times than not, when I end up getting the stun lock on the boss there for a few seconds, I genuinely take that opportunity to heal myself, just to keep the health up, because you can find yourself at full health right back down to 1 or 2 masks within a matter of seconds if you let this boss tally up attacks on you. Eventually the boss will transition into these mini phases where she will unleash more different types of attacks. One attack there where she'll cover half the screen in silk. Shortly after, huge amounts of bells will drop down. Now believe it or not, this is just the first phase of the fight. This is one of the few fights in the game where it actually has a second phase. Now when I got this far, I thought the fight was done, you know, but boy was I wrong. Now the fight is going to go even faster. She's going to go into pure overdrive here, and she is going to bring down bells all over the place. She will also attack you from the ground using that sickle attack she has. Normally in the first phase she'll start in the air, she'll dash down, then she'll use it, but not anymore. She can literally bring that attack out at any second. So the best advice I can give when you're going into the second phase here is to focus on dodging the bells, but keep your eye on the boss and only attack when you have a clear window to do so. You always want to get in an attack without taking damage in the process. Now once you win this fight, you do get a really nice power up from this, and it is something you're not going to expect at all. It is a musical instrument. That's right, we now have the ability to use the needling. Now this can be played anytime, anywhere, provided we have a little bit of silk to do so. And that needling will be used to open up a lot of doors that we might have found in some of the previous maps. Those doors will normally give us access to some real nice rewards. We also found one of those bells as well that we had to hit a switch to activate. Bell Heart was now free. So we're going to talk to Frey here, the shopkeeper, and Frey just has 2 items that we can get, the memory locket, and we can give in some rosaries to get back a rosary necklace if we want to do some saving. We also unlocked some houses here as well that are at the top of Bell Heart. The Scrounge here is a relic seeker, and we found a couple of things from our travels, so we're going to get rosaries from giving in all these items, which is great. More importantly, we unlocked the Pin Master. Our first needle upgrade will be done for free, which is great. All future needle upgrades we want to get done, we're going to have to find an item called a Pale Oil. Now, I believe there's 3 or 4 of these pale oils in the entirety of the game, so if we want to max out our needle, we will have to go and find all of those items. And I can tell you right now, some of them are not easy to get. I won't use the word hard, instead I would use the word tedious. You know, a lot is required from you to get some of those pale oils. So because I had lots of rosaries, I decided to purchase all of the maps I could purchase off Chakra, along with a lot of the pins and shell markers. They're all going to come in first hand later on when we're putting loads of different markers on our maps, so that we know we have to go back to certain places to do certain things. We also went back into Shellwood and we found the last polyp heart needed to give into this NPC to complete the quest. This guy is called Greyroot, and the first time we talk to Greyroot, it will task us on getting all of the polyp hearts. Once that quest is finished, we're going to get the polyp pouch. Now this is an absolutely amazing tool. Once this has been equipped, all tools, offensive tools we equip after that will become poisonous. So it's going to make our throwing darts, it's going to make any sort of tool we use way more deadly. Because we have the needle in, we're going to go back to the first zone here and we're going to open up the door. This gives us access to a new zone called Weave Nest Atla. And there's lots of different types of weave nests you can find in this game. There's at least 4 or 5 of them. Each one normally has something really useful that you can use on your travels. Now Chakra hasn't visited these zones, so instead of buying a map off Chakra, you can find the map if you explore these zones enough. And it's just nice because it's just one less item you have to save up rosaries for. So we're going to come across a very interesting NPC here by the name of Eva. And the more memory lockets, I think it's memory lockets that we find, the more power-ups we can get from Eva. So the first time talking to her, she's going to upgrade our Hunter's Crest. She's going to make it more powerful. Now, eventually, we don't actually end up using the Hunter's Crest at all. We're sticking with the Reaper Crest at the moment because of the additional healing we can get from striking enemies after we pop a heal. So to be fair, because of that capability, it's one of those quests where I find it just very hard to swap out for anything else until we get something different later on. Now this is just another gauntlet where we have to pogo off those red orbs, we have to pogo off these flies, at the same time we have to dodge the lava coming down. And this was just to get another mask shard. And all of these areas are inside Weave Nest Atla. I also found the Moss Mother yet again, and this was the second time now we have to fight the Moss Mother. Now this encounter is way harder. For starters, the arena is much smaller. The Moss Mother is faster, has a lot more HP, but the fight gets very interesting when she kicks it up a notch into phase 2. Now I found the best way to tackle this fight is to dish as much damage as possible to the Moss Mother before she starts banging into the ceiling there to summon down more adds. And if you can do this the way I did, and if you can be extremely aggressive at the start, you're going to have a way easier time doing this fight, because when you get to stage number 2, a second Moss Mother pops out. Now I didn't have too much difficulty with this, because by the time the second Moss Mother popped out, the first one was on very low HP. I was able to finish it off quite quickly with a few strikes of a silk spear. Once the fight was done, an item dropped, and this one is called the Weave Light. Now this item is pretty cool in that it increases the speed of our silk regeneration. So if we equip this tool, striking enemies will give us back a little bit more silk. So once we were finished with the Weave Nest, we went back and we did a couple of more quests here. This quest was to track down a skull tyrant. So this is basically another mini boss that we get to fight. Now this boss actually took me a couple of attempts, and the biggest problem was that every time the boss jumped up and down, lots of boulders would drop from the ceiling. And sometimes between the boss ramming at me and the boulders falling, it was kind of hard to not get hit by something. The boss had huge amounts of HP, but to be fair, it only had a small handful of attacks. It either jumped up and down, causing boulders to fall, or it would ram at you. That was about it. So we were doing more exploration here down in the Marrow. Because we could climb up walls, and because we could dash left and right, we could venture into new areas. We just got a memory lock there, which was nice. I also wanted to finish off the quest here too, to kill all of these flint enemies, because this is something I totally forgot about until I checked my journal. Once that quest was done, we got the last flint gem. I also found a cool looking shop here that wasn't here the first time I went through the Marrow. This was a really cool minigame. It was 25 rosaries and the game was quite simple. You had to get a score of well over 15 to get the first prize. You could miss a total of 3 times. After that, you'd have to quit out of the game and try again. Now it was well worth the effort needed to get the 15 strikes. We got a tool pouch expansion. That means we can carry more of all of the tools we can get in the game. So it just means more DPS, especially during boss fights, and the longer boss fights, you'll really appreciate having those expansion kits. So this was just another gauntlet I found here in the Deep Docks area, thanks to the new transversal skills we had. The great thing about this arena is that you could hit enemies into the flames there, and they would take a lot of damage from it. A lot of the enemies that you fight at the start of the game are fairly easy to dispatch. Eventually, we will come across regular enemies that will actually require a lot of thinking, a lot of patience, and a lot of strategy. A lot of the regular enemies in this game, especially the later ones, require a lot of effort to fight and to kill. After picking up that mass shard, I went over to the Farfields area, and there was a couple of things we had to do here as well. This gauntlet was excruciatingly hard. Now I'm just going to show the successful attempts here, but it took me a good few goes to actually get this right. The amount of times I jumped right there and hit those spikes was just too many to count. As you can see, I have a cocoon there. That's because I died. So you're going to notice that a lot, especially at the start of a lot of the boss fights that are on in the game. You'll notice the debris of cocoon on the ground, or you'll see me striking a cocoon, because I do die a lot in this game, and I mean a lot. I've died hundreds of times before I got to 100% completion. So we're doing more Farfields exploration here. We let a massive beast out there to roam the lands. Hopefully he won't cause too much damage. We'll have to find out later on. I decided to go back to Bone Bottom here to take a look at the quest board. I handed in 2 quests, as rewarded with a memory locket and a heavy rosary necklace. I also gave some moss berries here to the moss druid as well, and I was getting back rosaries every time I handed in moss berries, which was really nice. With all of the rosaries I saved up, I finally purchased the simple key from the shopkeeper Peb. Now once everything was purchased from that vendor, a skull tyrant literally came down out of nowhere, laid waste to the town, and I had to fight it straight away. Now I'll be perfectly honest with you, this fight took me by surprise big time. I was not expecting this at all. The game gave absolutely no indication that this thing was going to drop down and lay absolute waste to this town. Just when you think this town is going to be a safe zone, you can let down your guard, this thing literally comes down from the heavens and just ruins your day. Now, I am proud to say I actually beat it on my first attempt. I still don't know to this day if you have to buy all the items off the vendor to get that fight to activate, or if you have to complete all of the current wishes. But if someone is watching and you made it this far into the video, first of all, thanks a million. Subscribe if you like Hollow Knight SilkSong. But secondly, let me know what the conditions are to summon that actual skull tyrant. So because we had the dash and because we had the wall grab, I was able to float all the way over here to the left hand side of Bone Bottom, where I was getting my hands on some more goodies and some rosaries. The big prize of venturing over here was this chapel. This was the chapel of the Wanderer, and this is going to give us a crest that we end up using for more or less the rest of the game. This crest that we get will give us abilities very similar to how you move when you played as the Hollow Knight in the first game. That's how I felt anyway when I first got this crest. So once I realised how effective the downward slash was, it was very hard for me to change back to any other crest that we get going forward. This Wanderer crest is probably one of the best DPS crests in the game, in my opinion of course, because you hit so fast with it. Just look how fast we are now with these strikes. We also managed to break open the door here as well, so we can now quickly go back into that zone from Bone Bottom if we so wish. We also used our simple key to finally open up this door to see what was inside, and we ended up going back into the Wormway zone, but this time we got full access to this zone, so we can now fully explore the Wormways, and we also find a very interesting NPC up here as well. Eventually I came to a room with a door inside, and that door can only be opened once we play our Needling. Now, I couldn't actually get up to that door, and it was here I realised the game will surely give us a double jump ability, because how else are we going to get up there? Eventually, we made our way high enough where we got to talk to this cool looking NPC by the name of Xylitol. Now Xylitol here is an alchemist, and over the course of the 100% completion, this guy is going to give us a handful of quests to do, and every time we complete a quest for this guy, we're going to get back something worthy of the effort that we have to put in to make this quest come to fruition. So he's going to give us a tool here called the Needle File, and we have to go around the Wormways and use this to extract substance known as plasmium. And if you've played the first Hollow Knight game, you would have come across this. You would have found it in like blue cocoons that you could have struck with your nail, and that would have given you a little bit of a health boost until you got struck by enemies. So once we got all of the plasmium that this guy wanted, we got back the plasmium file, and we can use that to increase our own health in combat. I also went back to the Forge Daughter and picked up the Magma Bell. I also picked up the Stink Shards as well. Those Stink Shards are absolutely amazing to use. So while I was in the Deep Docks area, I decided to use my needling and open up the door here as well. This gave us access to the Weave Nest Syndril. Now, as far as I know, there's just one item you can get here, and that is a tool that will increase the speed of your dash, and this was the Silk Speed Anklets, and it actually comes in very handy for a couple of encounters in this game. I also picked up a quest here too from the innkeeper at the halfway inn, where he wanted to make a giant scarecrow to scare off all of those horrible birds that are lurking around the place. I had to pick up 25 rag pelts, so I just kept resting at the bench, going up to the top of his inn, fighting those birds, rinse and repeat until I had the 25 pelts gotten. As a reward, he gave me a crafting kit which was really nice, that will increase the potency of my tools even further. As we can see, the Sting Shard tool is absolutely amazing against these crawbirds. To be fair, this particular tool is amazing against most enemies in the game, especially if they go directly into the tool and they take the full blunt of its damage. You can actually down elite enemies and bosses quite quickly if you spam them with Sting Shards. Now, once we were finished getting that Silk Spool, we did a little bit more exploration here. We were fighting these scissors enemies again. This was a zone I actually hadn't explored yet. This was kind of the top of the big tower that looms over Greymore. A lot of enemies in this tower I found quite difficult to deal with, especially those big slug-looking enemies with the spears. Unlocking the elevator here was going to come in real handy for us because we're now going to enter into another zone very soon. It's called Sinner's Road, and it's going to be one hell of a zone to get through. But first, we came across a flea here, but this was a unique flea. This person here had a name, and his name was Cradle. Now, rescuing this guy actually unlocks a perk when we go back to the flea caravan. We can access his spa for the small little fee, and going into the spa will actually fill our sink gauge right up to the top. Now, going through Sinner's Road the first time, all of those little roach enemies are dead, but if you go through it again in the future, they would be very much alive and they're quite difficult to deal with. I also came across an NPC here known as the Green Prince. Eventually, we will come back with the key and we will free that NPC, and that will unlock huge amounts of side content that we get to explore later on in the video. Now, this particular area has hazardous water, and if we enter into those waters, we get a horrible debuff where it will sap a lot of the silk that we have, but also we won't be able to heal ourselves. So we have to get our silk gauge up to full, that will get rid of the debuff, and then we have to get the gauge back up to full again to get back health. So that water is something we absolutely don't want to land ourselves in. Now, it took me hours to get through this zone, I'm not going to lie to you. A long time to get through. A lot of the enemies I found very tough to deal with, especially the flying type enemies, but we got through it eventually. And this becomes a zone where I can go through it no problem at all. At the end of the day, it's just experience. We also came across Garmin and Zaza here as well, and they were nice enough to dispatch one of the more elite monsters for us so we could progress into the next area. Now, Garmin and Zaza are someone that we come across multiple times, and they do come in very handy in a couple of fights later on as well. Now, I didn't know this was what people are calling the harder path to get into the Citadel. As far as I was concerned, this was the only path you could take. I totally forgot about the blasted lands. So I just kept going through this area. I was picking up goodies, rescuing fleas, fighting enemies. I did die a lot, I mean a lot in this zone. It took me a full evening to actually get through this zone and into the next. I came across a bench that wasn't working. Now, I was actually really peeved about this, so I went online and I discovered if you activate a shortcut, you can actually fix the mechanisms to bring that bench up to its full potential so you can sit on it. We just had to go through a little bit of a gauntlet here. Now, this gauntlet was fierce challenging to say the least, but from looking at the difficulty that we had to go through to fight the savage beastfly, this was a walk in the park. Once I fixed the gears for that bench, I was able to sit on it, and this was going to be a huge boon for me now going forward, because we didn't have to start back at the halfway home every time I got killed. I also found an NPC here known as Stinks, correct me if I'm saying that name wrong, but this NPC comes in very handy because every so often, that NPC will go off, find morsels for us, and we can break them open, and every time we break open a morsel, we're going to get what's called a silk eater, and it's just a very handy item we can take to get back our cocoon if we don't want to go all the way back and retrieve it. At the very top of Sinner's Road, I found a little arena here, so we just had to fight a couple of ads inside. Once we were finished, we were rewarded with a simple key, which was great. I then found the new zone, and this place is called Boilwater. Now, a lot of people don't like this zone, me included, and you're going to see later on in the video as to why a lot of people hate this place. Now, this zone, just like Sinner's Road, has that horrible water, where if you fall into it, it becomes very difficult to heal yourself. The place is also layered with traps, so you gotta watch out. Most of the enemies you kill in this place will explode upon defeat, so you really have to take care when you're fighting enemies here. A lot of these enemies also respawn. Now, that enemy there in particular that fires darts at you, it's very hard to deal with. So if you have tools to spare, by all means, unleash your tools to get rid of it as quickly as you can, especially if you have ranged tools. The best advice I can give you about this place is to just have some patience and take it a step at a time. If you play anyway like me, and if you try to run through a place like this and get to the next area without knowing what you're up against, you're going to find yourself dead very, very quickly. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough rosaries to unlock the fast travel station here. It was 120 rosaries, and I was nowhere near having that amount on me. So we will have to come back to it later on with some rosaries and unlock it, because we're going to have to go back here, unfortunately, in the near future to do all of the content. There's a lot of content you have to do in Boilwater. So now we are making our way up into a new zone. Getting that memory locket was nice. After doing some more exploration of this Boilwater area, I came across an enemy with a huge cage. I was not expecting the following to happen here. I thought this was just going to be an attack, and I was going to lose at least 2 pieces of health, and I was going to start over on the bench. Instead, I started in a cell without my gear. No tools, no weapons, not even my trusty cloak. I was literally on my own with my hands and my feet. I just thought it was really cool that the developers put something like this into the game. I noticed all of my tools and gadgets were in the hands of those enemies just up above there, but to get to that location, we were going to have to do some crazy platforming, and we were going to have to avoid a lot of enemies. If we went outside the prison, because that's what we were in a place called the Slab, we would take cold damage if we stayed outside too long. So it was just one of those kind of platforming levels. Now apparently you can actually play through the game and not end up here at all, which is actually very interesting. So I consider myself quite lucky getting to experience this before the first playthrough was finished. I found Grindle again here as well, and it looks like he was captured as well, but he wasn't interested in helping me out to get out of here, so I was on my own. I had to find a couple of keys to make my way out. After doing some transversal, I managed to pick up the key of the Indolent here. Now a lot of those enemies we could fight them, but because we didn't have our needle, we're going to be fighting these enemies for the whole day, so I thought it was best just to avoid as much combat as possible. So once I opened up a gate here, I started to go into different zones of the slab, and I was unlocking shortcuts as I went along. Unlocking the shortcuts was a great time saver because I ended up dying a couple of times. I also found the map here as well, which was great. Once I got the map, I was very quickly able to see where I had to go to make some progress. Now I tried my absolute best to avoid all of the enemies I could, especially the flying type enemies. I also came across a flea. It was nice to get that freed. When that enemy walked into the trap, it was just so satisfying to see it get one-shotted. I had to go back out into the cold environment again, but fortunately for me, if I got anywhere close to fire or some sort of a heat source, that would prevent me from taking damage. That was a fairly cool cutscene there of Hornet cracking that guy's neck open, getting the gear back and getting some sweet revenge here. So we just had to do a little arena here, wipe out these enemies, and we could then leave the slab and progress through the game. Now the great thing about this slab area is that you can actually unlock a fast travel station here, so you can come back here anytime you want and you can do some more exploration. The key to the heretic is what we needed to finally get out of here, but eventually we will grab another key and that would open up more areas of this place. There's actually a boss we get to fight in this place, and I'm not going to spoil too much, but it is one of the coolest bosses in the game. The fight is so cool, I actually leave the whole fight in because it's just one of those fights that you have to experience for yourself. It's an insanely impressive fight. I went back to Sinner's Road and I decided to free the Grey Prince. I was hoping for the reward. I got nothing right now, but trust me, it is well worth the effort to go back, free that NPC, because it unlocks huge amounts of content later on in this playthrough. So we finally unlocked the fast travel here, which was great. If I wanted to go back to the Zartar zones, I could, but for now we're going to go a bit further. I entered into a zone here called the Mist. It's made up of randomized levels. To get out of here successfully, you have to play your instrument very close to those butterflies, and you have to exit in the direction that the butterflies go. Now this place is also home to a nasty enemy here. The best way to deal with these is to just jump and attack downwards every time they scream at you. After playing or needling a little bit more and making it through a couple of more zones, we're going to end up at a brand new location. That location is called Exhaust Organ. It's basically a giant musical instrument. And the boss within is one hell of a boss fight that we get to experience. A very difficult boss fight indeed, very fast paced. And you're going to notice, especially when you get close to the Citadel and after you get into the Citadel, that all of the boss fights exponentially ramp up in difficulty and quickness. So apparently this is one of the two ways you can actually get into the Citadel, which is the big primary quest at the moment, because we want to get into the Citadel to find out why we were captured in the first place. We want some answers. Now before we can get up and fight the big bad boss of this location, we have to do a little bit of platforming, and we have to ensure that we don't get hit by that big huge burst of steam. Now this boss is absolutely amazing. The boss is called Phantom, and just like Willow that we had to fight down in Bellheart, this boss is very fast paced. Now I had a lot of trouble with this boss because every time she threw her needle at me, I thought I could jump over the needle and get in from free hits. I wasn't expecting that she would dash towards the needle herself. But once I got that down, that was more or less the first phase of the bag. Now we had to be very careful with this boss because just like Lace, she had a wicked parry ability. So if we strike her too much and we trigger that parry move, she will do a series of attacks on the ground, so we gotta watch out. So I found the best way to deal with her was to just hit her, step away, wait for her to do a move, and then give her 1 or 2 strikes afterwards. Now when we transitioned into the second phase, this was the part I died the most. She would consecutively charge downwards, unleashing a huge blast. The best way I found to deal with that was to just run, and keep running from the left to the right of the screen. You're also going to notice with a lot of these boss fights, when I showed a successful attempt, I don't have my tunes because I've literally run out of shards. And I might have mentioned this before, but these fights took me a huge effort to get through. But don't get me wrong here, people. I had a lot of fun learning these fights. It took me, I'd say, at least 3 or 4 hours of attempting this fight to get it. And when I finished this game, I was reading about all these bosses on Reddit, and some people were saying they were wiping these bosses out in 1 or 2 attempts. And all I can say is that if you're one of those people, then my hat goes off to you. You have some serious skill and reflexes if you can actually dominate these fights within 1 or 2 attempts without ever looking at them or experiencing them firsthand. Now I wasn't really using my special silk abilities for this fight, I was saving all of my silk for heals. It was very satisfying to get the parry on that last strike and just wipe her off the face of the earth. It was just so satisfying to get that killing blow. She was such a difficult fight. We do get a big reward for completing this fight. We get an ability here called the Cross Stitch, and this is a parry ability that Hornet loved to do herself back in the first Hollow Knight game. So just before the enemy lands an attack, if we activate this ability, we will perform a devastating counter-attack. Now I do end up using the Cross Stitch in a couple of fights, but overall I do swap back to the Silk Spear, as I find it to be, you know, one of my more favourite abilities. So we have finally made it to the Citadel, and I absolutely loved this cutscene. It just showed how big the Citadel actually is, and I can tell you right now, it is absolutely huge. Now when you do get into the Citadel, don't worry, you're not locked into that place. You can easily take the fast travel and you can go back and explore any of the previous zones to your heart's desire. And that is the great thing about these games, it's the world building. So when we got access to the Citadel, we found Lace again. We don't get to fight her here, but don't you worry folks, we're going to end up fighting her a handful more times before this playthrough is finished. Now this place is so big, it actually has its own little mini fast travels. They're called terminals, and we will be activating these terminals as we progress through the Citadel. Now I don't do a whole lot of exploration today with the Citadel. I actually end up going back and I go through the blasted lands to fight the last judge. For now I'll do a little bit of exploration. You see, I was worried that I might lock myself out of certain content, so when I get to a certain point in the Citadel here, I go all the way back with all of the abilities I have learned, and I just want to make sure that I've gotten everything before I go further, because I absolutely love the exploration aspect of games like this. So once I unlock the fast travel here, I made a decision to go back and to do some more exploration. As we can see, I've got huge amounts of locations I can go back to. Bone Bottom, the Marrow, Deep Docks, Farfields, Greymore, Bellheart, Shellwood, the Slab, the Grand Bellway, which is where we are at the moment, and Bylewater. So there's loads of things we could do. I went back to Greymore, spoke to Cradle here at the flea caravan, and I paid 10 rosaries just to experience the spa. The spa does come in handy from time to time, especially if you want to go into a little arena, go through a gauntlet, or engage a boss with all of your silk fully replenished. After doing some more exploration, I found another flea, and I unlocked an achievement there called Flea Finder. And that just unlocks, I think, if you found more than 15 fleas. So that was a nice little achievement to get. I also found another silk skill at the very top right hand side of Greymore, and this was called the Thread Storm. And this is another ability Hornet uses in the first Hollow Knight game. Now this ability is very nice, especially when you're dealing with flying type enemies. Once that ability was unlocked, I checked all the quest boards, and then it was off to the Blasted Lands. Now, I didn't have a whole lot of trouble with this zone. After I was done with the playthrough, a lot of people were really fuming about the difficulty of this zone. It is a difficult zone, and the run back to the Last Judge, I mean, yeah, it can be quite irritating. Though before we fight the infamous Last Judge, it was time to fight the Great Conchflies. Now, these guys were quite the fun battle. They were very well telegraphed, so I knew when they were coming a mile off. And I mean, compared to the Phantom fight, this fight honestly was a walk in the park. All it took me was just 2 attempts to get this fight done. All you need to be aware of in this fight is where the debris comes from, because that's where the bosses are going to fly out from and charge you. That little tool they're using that ricochets all over the place, that is something we'll actually get later on in the challenge. What you might notice after this fight is one of the conchflies actually survives, and you can see him there in the background. So we will have to do a little bit of a revenge match later on with that particular conchfly. But for now, we're going to do some more exploration here of the Blasted Steppes. I came across another house here, and this NPC was called the Pinstress. And this NPC is going to give us a real cool ability. It's going to be our very own charge up attack. Now in the first Hollow Knight game, you actually learned a total of 3 charged up attacks. But as far as I know, and someone correct me if I'm wrong here in the comments, but as far as I know, you only learn 1 charge up attack in this game. And that charge up attack comes in very handy, which was nice. So I came across a chakra here as well, and I purchased a few things from her. I eventually made it up to the Last Judge, and those 5 bells that you see on the door there, they were from activating all of those belfries as we were progressing through the game. Now this fight is absolutely amazing. The Last Judge has some devastating abilities we absolutely want to avoid. Now I have the Magma Bell tool. That means if I get hit with a fire-based attack, I will only take 1 mask of damage and not 2. So that tool comes in very handy in this fight. So if you are struggling with this fight, it might be worth your time to go back to the Deep Docks, talk to the Forge Daughter, and purchase that tool. Now I end up having to fight this boss and winning this fight 3 different times, because for some reason there was a bug with the game and it wasn't saving my progress. Now most of the attacks this boss does, they're very easy to dodge. The big attack you have to watch out for, in my opinion, is when the boss spins its weapon around and a big flame comes out, because you don't get a whole lot of notice with that attack. Even that ram attack there, it's quite well telegraphed, you know the boss is going to charge at you. So it's just a simple matter of jumping. You can even attack downwards if you feel a little bit adventurous. Eventually, the boss did succumb to all of the attacks we have been dishing out. The easiest thing about this boss is that it only has maybe 3 or 4 different attacks. Once you learn off all the attack patterns, it becomes a very enjoyable and easy fight. Now towards the very end, you gotta watch out here because the boss will detonate. And what happened to me the second time I beat this boss was that the detonation killed me, and for some reason the game didn't count that as a kill. Now as we can see, I got the achievement there for killing the judge, okay? I didn't actually go into the Citadel after the fight. I went back and did some more exploration and I found this flea here. But because I didn't go through the door, for some reason the game didn't register that I had the boss beaten. So I had to fight the boss all over again. So yeah, I had to fight this thing a second time. And I actually had to fight it a third time because when I killed it this time, it exploded and the explosion killed me, so it didn't even count it as a kill. So basically, long story short, I had to fight and beat the judge 3 consecutive times to get into the Great Citadel from this direction. Now that was the Blast Steps experience that I'm sure a lot of you didn't have to go through. When we went into the Great Citadel from this direction, it wasn't as smooth of an experience as it was when we went in there from the other side. Instead, the elevator broke, it crashed, we ended up with just one piece of health, and we had a new zone here we got to explore. This place is called the Underworks. Now, this place is home to very irritating enemies. Those little fly fellas there are so hard to deal with. They have a few nasty abilities. They go up in that little rotatory attack. That will deal 2 masks of damage if it lands. They also throw projectiles at you as well, so they're just hard to deal with in general. They also hover around the place, so it can be quite difficult to land attacks on them. So, as per most of the flying type enemies in this game, they're just an absolute nuisance to deal with. But what can you do? The Underworks map has absolutely no shortage of difficult platforming challenges, and a lot of these little platforming challenges that you see here is just going through the main portions of the game. So a little bit of patience, a little bit of jumping, and we're good to go. Now, a lot of the enemies here are reskins of enemies we fought in the past. They just have a tad bit more HP, and sometimes they can deal a little bit more damage. In the next room, just up above, we pick up a brand new tool that we can add to our arsenal, and this one is called the Delver's Drill. Now, at the moment, I'm using a combination of the straight pen along with the poison pouch, and it makes for quite the effective weapon. We just unlocked a terminal here, and there's several of these adventure kit terminals located all around the Citadel. There must be about at least 5 or 6 of those. Eventually we will unlock them all, and it just makes getting around the Citadel oh so easy. It saves a lot of time. So if we do come across them, we will try our best to save up all of the rosaries we need to get them activated there and then, so we don't have to make the trek all over again to unlock them. So we've just done another little arena here, filled up to the top with difficult enemies. It was very satisfying to see that one drop down and fall into the cogs, so it was a nice freebie there. As we can see, the straight pens are so handy. I just had 1 mask left. It was going to be a very tight cut, like most of the arena challenges in the game. We just picked up another silk spool, and now we finally made our way into the coral chambers. Now, this is also part of the Citadel, and I'm going to pay 70 rosaries here just to get the map. So we're not really going to find chakra here at all, so we're going to have to get all our maps via those little map stations. As you can see, the Citadel is quite big. You noticed by looking at that map on the right hand side, some of it was already filled out because we got there from doing the other boss fight, the phantom boss fight. Eventually we will make our way back over to that side again because we need to get up to a big shrine, but first we're going to do some exploration. We just picked up another silk spool there, which was really nice. That is our silk bar increased ever so slightly yet again. Now, there are huge amounts of power-ups that we get to find inside this Citadel. There's also a lot of boss battles we get to do inside here as well. So accessing all these terminals as quickly as possible is going to be the way to go to make the most of our time. Out of all the boss battles we get to do in the Citadel, there is one boss fight coming up quite soon, and it is one of my favourite boss fights in the game, and you will see so in just a couple of minutes. Now, a lot of these enemies are quite difficult to deal with in my opinion because a lot of them are flying type enemies. They throw projectiles at us. They also have a lot of special abilities, most of them. Now, up there, it's actually a pale oil, and that's something we want, because the more pale oils we get, the stronger our needle becomes. Now, we don't get that till later on in the game, but to 100% this game, we will have to get all of the pale oils. We also finally made our way right up to what's called the first shrine. We picked up an item here called the White Key. That is needed to progress further into the main story. We also unlocked a bell here as well, and because we rung that bell, a lot of people are now going to gather at this location. In return, we're going to get our very own quest board, where we can take on loads of extra side jobs. That means a lot more goodies for us. So when we went outside of the first shrine, the caretaker popped out of the tent. Now, the caretaker is a very important NPC, and you'll see so later on in the video. We now have a total of 4 terminals unlocked. We're now going to make our way through this long gauntlet of an area before we get to the next boss fight. Now, these enemies here become very easy to farm once you get used to all of their fighting abilities. And this is one of the best rosary farming locations that I know of. Eventually, we will get a tool and it will increase the amount of rosaries we get after defeating enemies. So we end up getting anywhere between 50 and 55 rosaries from beating those enemies. It's a real nice way to get thousands of rosaries within the space of 15 or 20 minutes. So we're now going to pick up a couple of wishes, and it's finally time to fight one of the most fun bosses in this game, the Cogwork Dancers. Now this fight is pretty cool in terms of those Cogwork Dancers will move in the direction that the line is going to go. But here's the thing folks, they get faster. So this is just a little bit of tutorial saying, hey, this is how the fight works. But when they get into the second phase, they pick up the pace dramatically, and it becomes a little bit more challenging to keep up. Now, the biggest thing you have to watch out for in this fight is that when they land, they'll do a little arc attack. So even if you're a little bit close to them, you will actually take damage. So we're now going into the second phase, and it's more or less the exact same as the first, except they are much faster. Now, these bosses, despite the fact that there's two of them, do not share the same health. So if you want to push them into the next phase as quickly as possible, then we try our absolute best to single out just one of them and pile on the damage. Now this fight is not a DPS race. There's a whopping 4 phases to this fight. This is just phase number 2. Phase number 3 is by far the hardest phase, and phase number 4 is a little bit of a joke phase, but a phase nonetheless, and you can absolutely die in the 4th phase if you don't take it seriously. Trust me on that. Now later on in the game, when we get into the big bad boss battles, we will come across another encounter like this, except it's going to be way harder. I mean way harder, way more fast paced, and the special abilities are much tougher to avoid, but we'll get more into that when we actually reach that location later on in the video. So this is now the 3rd phase of the fight, and as you can see, the Cogwork Dancers are now out of sync. Thankfully, only one of them moves at a time. So as long as you pay attention, keep your focus, it's pretty easy to dodge most of their abilities. Now when they do tangle up and do that little dance in the center, that is actually a good opportunity to get in a Silk Spear or a special ability to do some real good damage. And as per usual, they don't share the health pools, so singling out one is the best way to go to get through these phases as quickly as possible. We are now going to enter the 4th phase of this fight. Now the 4th phase is a little bit of a joke phase, it's a little bit of a sad phase because the other Cogwork Dancer are all on their own. Now when this first happened, I thought this dancer was going to go into an absolute berserk mode, but it didn't. It just got really slow and it was a bit depressing, but still, do not underestimate it. If it lands a hit, it will still do 2 masks of damage, so just keep your wits about you, attack it, get it done, and beat the fight. Once this fight is beaten, we're going to pick up some new main quests. Basically, we have to run around the Citadel here, as big as it is, and we have to collect 3 songs in total before we can go straight up to the big tower and fight the last few bosses the game has to offer for now. So as we can see, the cogs are moving. We're now going to get introduced to 3 new NPCs here, and each NPC has a song they want us to collect. Now 2 of the 3 songs are quite easy to do, it's just a lot of platforming. There is one song however, and you have to do an arena, and oh my goodness folks, it is one of the hardest things to do in this game in my opinion. In my opinion, and this is just me now, it is way harder than the Savage Beastfly. It is excruciatingly hard. The biggest problem with it is that it's just so long. There's 11 waves, that's right, 11 waves of enemies you have to get through to complete it. And the final wave of enemies that come out, it's just absolutely crazy, it's just over the top. But first, let's do some more exploration here. So this was a nice free bench, which is great, I love getting free benches. We are now in a part of the Citadel called the Cogwork Core. There's lots of things to do down here, lots of goodies to collect. The first thing we're going to do, of course, is what we always do, we're going to explore. Because at this moment in time, I had no idea where I was going. I came across a little arena battle. Now this one pales in comparison to the one you have to do to pick up that song. These enemies were an absolute treat to fight. Most of these enemies you could easily beat by just bouncing off their heads. It's always a bonus when you strike an enemy and they fall into the moving cogs, because if they fall in, they get one-shotted straight away. Now the final enemy here almost got the better of me because I decided that the best approach was to just circle with attacks and hopefully do enough damage. We got a mask shard from that room, so it was then time to go back to the main part of the Cogwork Core and work our way down to see what else awaited us. Now, for some reason, this kind of reminded me of the White Palace from the first Hollow Knight game. because some of the platforming sections were a little bit similar, where you kind of had to pogo off cogwheels and things like that, so if you didn't pogo right, you were going to feel the pain. A weird looking enemy also dropped down from the ceiling here, and I decided to fight it instead of trying to escape. When I was finished with that little bout, I decided to run away in the end because I kept dying to it. I just ran past it, and I picked up another silk spool, which was real nice. I also came across a room here, and we had the loyal Murgwin inside. Now, this guy gives us an absolutely amazing quest. We have to go around the map of Farloom, the entire map, and we have to find rare and unique ingredients. This wish is called the Great Taste of Farloom. And if we want to get our hands on these ingredients, we will have to explore every nook and cranny with most of the maps we have been to so far. And a lot of these ingredients aren't just going to fall into our laps happily. We're going to have to fight to get them, or we're going to have to go through some very difficult platforming sections. So the challenge was on, but it is absolutely necessary we get that done so we can get some real nice upgrades. And the prize you get from doing that quest is a pale oil. That's right, it's a weapon upgrade. So what we have here is just a little music puzzle. So we just have to hit those notes in a certain order, and it gives us a cog heart piece. I think there's 3 of those pieces to get in total. When we get all of the pieces, it's going to unlock some extra content that we need to do to 100% this file. So we actually have a ton of quests picked up. We got a tracking quest here to find a missing person, and we found her right down here in the storage room. It's always worth doing these quests because every time we beat a quest like this, these vendors will have more items you can buy off them later on. So the next thing we're going to do here now is go into a new zone because we have the white key that we picked up from the first shrine. This will give us access to an elevator, and this is going to bring us right down to a new area where we get to pick up a new transversal skill. And this skill is going to make fighting aerial type enemies way easier. So this place is called White Ward, and there's a very interesting NPC vendor that lives here called the 12th Architect, and we will meet that NPC eventually. She sells some amazingly good items that we want to get our hands on as quickly as possible. Now, White Ward is home to a lot of new enemies that we haven't encountered yet, and I'm not talking about reskins, I'm talking about whole new unique designs such as this one here. When I first encountered this enemy, it literally scared the crap out of me because of all the tentacles that were coming out of it. We also picked up the White Ward map here as well, which is very nice. Using the map, we can very easily see which direction we have to go to make some progress. Now, these scissor type enemies was something that was actually shown in the trailer, so it did feel a little bit nostalgic checking this out because this appeared in one of the first trailers that came out with the game all those years ago. Despite the fact that we have a fairly large array now of silk offensive skills, I always seem to swap back to the first one we got, which was the silk spear. I also picked up the injector band. This is something now that becomes an absolute necessity. We will have this on us at all times. It increases the speed of binding. Basically, it's a quick heal, but you still get 3 masks when you heal up, which is absolutely amazing. So we're now entering the bottom of White Ward here, and there's going to be a very important skill we're going to pick up now in the next couple of minutes. We will, however, explore every single nook and cranny. And I mean, the amount of secret stuff packed into this game is absolutely insane. We ended up back in the Underworks, but this is a different part of the Underworks, as we can see on the map. Now, it does connect back to the Underworks that we already went through after we beat the last judge. And that's what I love about this game. A lot of the maps just connect up. The majority of the enemies in this zone are fairly easy to fight. They'll die after one hit. It's nice just to get some silk back up if you're low on health. Now, this was a fairly challenging gauntlet because the floor actually disappears once you step on it. And those cogwork bugs there had explosives on them. The last thing you want, and trust me, this has happened to me on a good few occasions, is to get hit by an explosion straight into lava or straight into a lava source that's coming down from the ceiling. It's nothing worse than taking 2 points of damage from an explosion and then taking 2 more points of damage from getting hit with the lava. Before you know it, you're dead. Eventually, we actually found our way into a small little room that had a lovely craft metal inside. Now, if we're going to 100% this game, we're going to have to get more or less all of the craft metals because you need a lot of them to make tools that you might come across, but also to buy certain tools from vendors. Eventually, we found our way into a very big room with a brand new silk skill inside, but first we had to jump across some floors that were dissolving into the lava. Now, those floors, as far as I know, do not come back, but we don't need them because this next skill is an absolute game changer. With this skill, we can go to even more places now. It's called the claw line. It's basically a grappling hook. You might have noticed on your own journeys these rings that drop down from the ceiling, and that's the reason why these rings are here. You can just grapple onto them. So we can now go back to all of the previous maps we have explored, and we can look for those rings, and that will get us up into even new areas. Now the beauty of this grappling hook is that it doesn't just grapple you onto rings. It will grapple you onto walls. It will even grapple you onto enemies. It is one of the handiest abilities around if you want to get from A to B very quickly, or if you want to very quickly close the distance between you and an enemy, especially flying enemies. We just picked up another silk spool. It was then time to go back and talk to this 12th architect. Because we had that grappling hook ability, we could access this room, and we can now access the 12th architect's wares. Now, this NPC sells a big array of items that we absolutely want to get our hands on. That architect's key is something that we can only get once we acquire 7 more tools. We can get a total of 3 tools off of this architect, including a lovely crafting kit. But first, we need to get our hands on some rosaries. Because we've rescued Jubilana from a potentially horrible fate, she now has returned to the first shrine with a much larger array of items that we can purchase from her. But the biggest problem right now is the fact that we just simply don't have the rosaries. So there will come a time where we will farm enemies for the bones of an hour while I'm listening to some really nice music on YouTube. Now, I don't really show it here, I'll just show a couple of fights, but I literally farm enemies for the whole hour. The enemies right after the first shrine on the left to get thousands upon thousands of rosaries so I can buy all those items. We're now entering into a new zone. This place is called the Whispering Vaults, and just like all of the previous zones, there's a huge amount of things we have to do here to 100% the game. First things first though, we have a little arena here that we have to get through. Now, this isn't the worst arena in the game, it's not that bad. Even that little mini boss that jumps out at the end, that's just a regular enemy you're going to find in the Whispering Vaults. A lot of the enemies that we do fight in this arena are flying type enemies, but because we have the grapple, they're much easier to engage now. It's just a matter of grappling onto those enemies and then pogoing off their head until we defeat them. So this guy only has maybe 2 abilities. He'll try to jump on our head and he will dash us with his claws. After a couple of attacks, he goes down easy enough. There's 2 very important items we want to get our hands on here in the Whispering Vaults. The first is to learn one of the 3 main songs that we need to push the main quest forward. The second item we want to get our hands on is the lovely pale oil. But to grab that, we have to do a little bit of a puzzle. So we picked up a cylinder here, and we can give the cylinder to this NPC that also lives in the Whispering Vaults, Cardinius. Now eventually we will come across a very precious cylinder, a sacred cylinder, that we can give to Cardinius, and that's how we learn one of the main songs. The great thing about picking up these cylinders is that you get rosaries back every time you give one to Cardinius. So those cylinders are something we will be looking out for as we progress on with the story. We're still finding huge amounts of fleas in every nook and cranny that we explore. I think there's a total of 30 fleas we have to find to unlock the achievement for finding every single flea in the game. So we do need to do that if we want to get 100% on this file. So we just beat the puzzle here. We can now get access to a room and look what is inside the fabulous pale oil. We can go back now to the Pinmaster with that, and we can get our needle upgraded yet again. We also found Jubilana yet again, scrounging around for more items. So I just completed a quest here to get some fine pins. The best way to do this is to rest at the bench beside the fast travel station and just go in and out fighting the enemies until you have all of the pins that you need. That's how I did it anyway. A heavy rosary necklace is always real nice to get. With that, I actually completed the quest Building Up Songclave. That's the name of this place. I know I call it the first shrine, but the place is actually called Songclave. That unlocked a new quest, Cloaks of the Choir. This will reward us with another heavy rosary necklace. Now there's a real easy way to get that cloak quest done. There is a very specific enemy that spawns near one of the benches that you can rest at, and it has a very high drop chance of the cloak. So I basically just sit at the bench, kill the enemy, rinse and repeat until I have all the cloaks that I needed. I also purchased the max shard here at Jubilana, and that increases my maximum health, which is great. We will take all the survivability we can muster up. We're also going to go back to Greymore, to the halfway in here. We're going to talk to New, and we're going to complete that quest, Bugs of Farloom. The reward for this one was well worth it. We get a tool pouch expansion. That means we can carry more tools around, so that's going to be of much greater use to us in those more dangerous battles that are to come. Speaking of more dangerous battles, remember that savage beastfly? Well, here it is again. But this time, we're standing on breakable ground, and this savage beastfly would have absolutely no problem diving down into the ground, breaking it up into little pieces. Now, this particular model of savage beastfly will not spawn in 3 different types of ads, it will just spawn in one, but that ad alone is a serious problem. Not only is it a flyer type, it will also shoot projectiles at us, so we just have to have our wits about us. Now, the floor does come back, which is nice, and I have to say, just from experience, this fight wasn't as hard as the first fight, but I think the main reason was that we have way more utility this time round. We have way more options, way more jump options, way more attack options. So I made my way over to another house here in the far fields, and there's a little arena here at the very bottom. Now, if we land on that piece of ground there at the bottom, it will sink into the lava. So we only want to land on that if we have no other choice. Most of the combat we will be doing, it'll be airborne. Now, we do have the grapple, so it did make combat a little bit easier. Now, when you're finished that arena, it's not over. You need to get back up as quickly as possible, or the lava is going to get us and we will perish. So this is one of the more interesting gauntlets we had to do to pick up. I think it was a mask shard again at the end of this. But even the music added that extra little bit of, oh, I need to move really quickly before the lava gets me. So this was absolutely one of the more interesting gauntlets I had to do to get a mask shard. And to be fair, it took me about 4 attempts to actually beat that arena and make it out in one piece. But I did have a lot of fun doing it. It was kind of a unique event. And that's not the only time we're going to have to race against time to avoid lava. It's going to happen again in the near future, and it's going to be way harder. So we're back in the cogwork core now, and because we have the grapple hook ability, we can actually progress a bit further. So we're making our way to the top of the cogwork core right now. We need to make our way to the top to get our hands on another song. So this is a very difficult platforming section. It took me, I'd say, the bones of 2 hours to actually get through this. The main reason why I was failing is because I just didn't fully understand how the grapple worked. You see, every time you use your grapple, you use up a little piece of silk. If you have huge amounts of silk, you can actually spam the grapple over and over again, which is nice. I also didn't know you could pogo off of the moving cogs. If I knew those 2 things, I would have had that little platforming gauntlet done way faster. But look, it's just one of those things where you learn as you go along. So at the end, when we reached the top here, we had to do a little puzzle. There was 4 pillars in total. We just had to strike all of the pillars in a way where all of the musical notes lined up. Once you figure out the first one, the rest were pretty easy to do. It's now time for us to learn one of the 3 sacred songs that we need to get up into the Cradle and fight the final boss. And this one was the Architect's Melody. Once we're finished with that, we're able to use our lovely grappling ability to reach a new section of the Citadel. And this place is called the High Halls. Now, the High Halls isn't the biggest place in the Citadel, but it is a very challenging place because it revolves heavily around the use of the grappling hook to get around. It's also home to new enemies I haven't discovered before, and a lot of these enemies are quite tough, especially those floaty enemies that just charge towards you. They also have a nasty parry attack as well. Eventually, we do make our way down to the bottom, and that's where the real fun begins. You see, remember that horrendously hard arena I mentioned previously? That's where we have to go to get the next song from the High Halls. We have to go through the very hard arena. But first, I used a craft metal, and I managed to make myself a cog fly tool. Now, the cog fly ends up replacing the straight pin that I've been using since the start of the game. The cog fly is an amazing tool. Basically, you summon it the same way you'd use any tool, but it just flies around and it automatically attacks enemies. And you can even sync it up with your poison pouch so that when it attacks enemies, they become poisoned and take additional damage. So I'm going to spend 70 rosaries here, and we're going to pick up the map for the High Halls. I also went back and handed in a couple of quests. Now, just so you know, I did attempt the arena a few times, maybe 20 times. I literally used up a whole day in real life to complete it. It just wasn't working out, so I left. I didn't show any of that footage because, as I said at the start of the video, I'm only going to show footage of me successfully completing events. But I just want to make a point right now that arena in the High Halls is extremely hard. And I end up going back to it when I have a much stronger nail, I have much better tools set up, and I have more health. So we're going to get a lot of power-ups before we go back and get that done. So we got a quest here where we had to go down and we had to rescue Sharma here because she went down looking for medical supplies. I had 800 rosaries. I decided to purchase the crafting kit. This, just like the previous kits, will increase the attack power of my lovely tools, making my cogflies even more lethal. I then went over to Mount Frey. I purchased the Mount Frey map. I also purchased the rest of the markers too that I could off Chakra here. Now, Mount Frey is a very difficult platforming section, and we can't be out in the elements for too long. It works the same way as when we were in the slab, because the slab prison is basically located right beside the mountain. So we need to go through all of these platforming gauntlets, and we need to find the heat source as quickly as possible, or we just get killed and we have to start again from the bench. So you could call it a little bit of a time trial, you know? Because we had the grappling hook, we can actually get this completed. Now there is a huge reward at the end of this. We will end up learning the double jump ability. And let me tell you something, that double jump makes the rest of this game way easier. Because it's just an extra defensive and transversal utility that we have. And there's actually a few places we can explore in the earlier versions of the map when we get the double jump. So our character ends up becoming extremely versatile. Between the double jump, between the floating we can do with the cloak, between the grappling hook, the dash, we end up becoming this transversal machine, you know? There's absolutely nowhere we can't go kind of thing. And it just opens up the whole game to us. Once we get the double jump, we're just missing one ability, and we kind of get that way later on in the video. We also picked up a tool there, and it's a fair nice tool. I use it later on for the real tough battle. Basically, when you take damage, it creates a copy of you, and if the enemy hits off that copy, it explodes and pins and does damage. So it's very similar to one of the charms you get, you know, the Torn charms that you get back in the first Hollow Knight game? It's quite similar to that. I was very close to getting killed here. I went up into the next area. I had 2 pieces of mask left, 1 piece of mask, and just before that last mask dissipated, I managed to find a fire source and a bench. So we finally found a big current here. It brought us all the way up to where we can get the double jump. Now this isn't the summit, just so you know. You can actually go higher than this, but we have to get a couple of more power-ups before we can get to the very top of the mountain. But you know what? Playing the song right here brings down a really cool bird-like NPC. When this NPC first turned up, I thought it was going to be a big boss fight that I was going to have to do. But no, we end up getting the fade down cloak, which is basically the double jump. But not only that, that cloak also shields us from the elements so we don't get cold anymore. So if we decide to go back to Mount Frey in the future, we don't have to worry about finding heat sources. So once we're finished with Mount Frey, as we can see, we're now back in Boil Water. I wanted to do a lot more exploration of this zone. Despite the fact that I wasn't a huge fan of this zone, I now had the map and I could see that there was a lot more of this zone that I could explore. I had the double jump and I had the grappling hook ability, so there was absolutely nothing stopping me from exploring the entirety of this zone. Now, just so everyone knows, there is a particular boss in this zone. If you've already been here, you know what I'm talking about. It's this boss right here. Before you fight the boss, you have to go through a gauntlet of enemies. These enemies are very irritating. To jump up out of the maggot-infested waters, they will attack you. You gotta be very quick. You also get these new enemies that try to hover over you and fire spikes down upon you. And then, every couple of waves, a huge trap just like that one will swing down from the ceiling and it'll try to hit you for a couple of masks. So I ended up failing that gauntlet quite a number of times. I decided to come back to it in the near future. For now, I was going to explore more of the lovely Boiled Water area. I ended up running through another gauntlet here. This gauntlet was actually quite difficult. I died I think twice before reaching the mask shard. It's very hard to predict those enemies jumping up from the water, because every time they grabbed me, I took a piece of damage. Then I'd end up in the water again and end up getting the debuff, you know, for the maggots. Finding that bench was an absolute godsend. So not only did I get a lovely mask shard, but I also found the bench. And you know what the great thing about that bench was? It makes the route a little bit shorter to get back to the main boss fight. So it was now time to fight the boss yet again, Growl the Great. Now, because I was doing this gauntlet so much, I actually got pretty good at fighting the ads that jumped up out of the water, but I still couldn't beat the actual boss itself. So I decided to give Wild Water a little bit of a break and do some more exploration with my new transversal abilities. This place is called the Memorium, and it's very close to the first shrine area. You need to double jump to get up here. Now, there's probably a way you can get up here without the double jump as well. I imagine you could pogo off one of those big enemies that you fight just to the left of the first shrine, but I'm not that good at the game just yet. There's lots of goodies we can pick up in the Memorium area here. So we just got a mossberry there, and there was a lot of kind of mini bosses that we could fight here as well. I also found another puzzle, and just like the previous puzzles that we did, this would give us a cog heart piece once we fully complete it. And I think this was either the second or the third piece that I had gotten. Now at this moment in time, I didn't know what these pieces were for. I only find out later on that it will activate a boss fight for us, a really cool boss fight, and we get to do that later on with the challenge. So just doing some more very, very difficult platforming here in the Memorium section. That little section there took me a while to do because you had to time the grappling hook pretty well. It was now time to get another piece of silk capacity. And because we already had a previous piece, our silk bar was going to get a slight increase. Now those little slight increases make a huge difference because it also means that we can activate more silk spears if we want to dish out some serious damage against enemies. I also unlocked another terminal here as well, and this is going to be the terminal for the Memorial. And as we can see now, we have a lot of areas unlocked. So I came across a new zone here with some strange lightning going on and off all the time. What I didn't realise was that I was going to be entering into a little bit of a mini boss fight here. Now these enemies end up throwing these lightning orbs at me, and they hit me for some fairly big damage. I did die one time only, came back in afterwards, and I annihilated them with a silk spear. I got the vault vessels as a prize. At the very top of the Memorium, I found a giant flea, and this one did not want to go back to the caravan peacefully. We actually had to fight this one and knock some sense into it that it wasn't safe in the Citadel. So after a couple of slaps with my needle and a little bit of persuasion from the cogflies, it flew back to the caravan. So we went back to the farfields here. I opened up a door here, and you have to pay 30 rosaries every time to open the door, but you can actually destroy the mechanism there, which means you don't have to pay the 30 rosaries anymore to get in here. There is a merchant in here by the name of Mart, and Mart, just like all the other merchants, sells a lot of things that we need. I decided to get the tool pouch right now for the expansion, so I could summon more cogflies during my fight. While I had the money, I also got the weighted belt. It's now time to fight Trobido! I absolutely love this fight, and guess what folks? You get to fight a second version of this later on in the challenge. It is way harder. Now this is a very colourful fight, it's a very sporadic fight. Trobido likes to throw these little balls at you all the time and they will explode, so you need to watch out. Also, he loves to get into a little hurricane move there, and if he hits you with that hurricane, you will take some fierce damage. Best to avoid it at all times. Now, Trobido is one of those fights where it can be quite difficult to get hits on him, so the best time to attack him is directly after he uses an attack, or in the middle of an attack. Now, it took me about 10 attempts to actually learn all of the Trobido mechanics, learn how to dodge all of his moves, and we finally got the better of him. I didn't use the cogflies in this because I felt that he just moved around way too much, the cogflies weren't very effective, so I just switched back to my lovely handy pins there, and they were able to do some extra damage. Eventually, we beat the fight, and Trobido will drop a tool that we need for 100% completion. The tool we pick up now, I think, is called the Claw Mirror, and it's a very interesting tool. Every time we heal ourselves, we'll emit basically a blast wave that will damage nearby enemies. We also completed another puzzle here too and got another cog heart piece. It was then back to the first shrine to complete some quests. We just completed Strengthening Songclave quest there, and that activates more quests for us to do. We have the Last Merchant and the Wailing Mother. Both quests very interesting, and both quests are going to give us access to some new zones. So we're going to go back into the Whispering Vaults here. I managed to find a map, and I also managed to activate a shortcut that leads right up to Songclave. So it was a very handy shortcut to get. As we can see from the map there, there's still a few places we can go, a few places we get to explore. I went through a very difficult gauntlet here, and I ended up at the very bottom of Water by the time I get through this. But I also end up with some very unique items as well, and these items are needed to 100% the game. And that's what I absolutely love about this SilkSong game. Just like the first Hollow Knight game, there's just so many secrets tucked away in this place. Like, you never know when you're going to go from one map to the next, or what's going to happen when you find a new location. Sometimes you can break a crack open in a wall, and it could lead to a huge hidden zone. I wonder how many people so far have played this game and missed out on huge amounts of bosses and zones. I ended up getting an item here called the Twisted Bud, a very irritating item because every time you open up your inventory, you can hear this thing crying. And if you actually hover over it, if you select it, it cries even more. Now, we will be using that eventually to complete a quest, but first, I decided to do some more exploration here. Because we had all of the lovely transversal abilities, there was nothing stopping me from reaching the absolute heights of the Citadel to see what was up here, what we could collect. And to my surprise, there was another flea that we get to save and bring back to the caravan. So I just destroyed some debris here as well, and I went into the next room, only to find a shortcut to get back into the Exhaust Organ map, where we fought Phantom. So we finally made our way through the Whispering Vaults. We had to go through the Underworks again to get up into this place to get the Sacred Cylinder. And we can now give the Sacred Cylinder to this NPC here. We're going to play the music, and this is going to teach us the Vault Keeper's melody. So we now have 2 songs out of the 3 that's needed. I also picked up a mask shard down here as well in the Whispering Vaults. That was enough to increase my maximum health yet again. So our character now had, I think it was 8 masks out of 10 in total. It was now time to do another tracking quest, and this led us to a new location where we need to save Jubilana yet again. A lot of the enemies that I was encountering on the bridge here reminded me of miniature versions of Morwing, so these must be his offspring. So the more of these we destroy now, the better, because we absolutely don't want to see any more of these Morwings roaming around the place. As we can see, Jubilana was crunched down, waiting for us to come along and save her skin, and that's what we absolutely do. Once we saved Jubilana, we weren't finished here. I noticed towards the very end there was a shard bundle, but I also noticed a wall that was literally begging me to climb it. I noticed a hidden wall, and I got very excited when I found this because I just wasn't expecting anything to be up here. To my surprise, after doing a little bit of platforming here, we made our way into a brand new zone. And this place is going to be called the Putrefied Ducks. And just like Sinner's Road, just like Bilewater, this place had that lovely inviting maggot water that if you fall into it, you get a serious debuff. Now those fly enemies were extremely irritating. Not only were they extremely fast, very difficult to hit, but they also spewed out projectiles that did a lot of damage to us. My cog flies weren't very effective here. Because of those fly traps, they would just grab my lovely cog flies and they would try to eat them. Thankfully, if we get grabbed, we can fight our way out of the little tentacles before we make it all the way into its teeth. Because I had lots of rosaries from farming up enemies, I was able to unlock the fast travel station here, which was great. We can now come back here anytime we want and do further exploration. Finding the map of the Putrefied Ducks was very handy indeed. When I opened up the map, I noticed it wasn't the biggest zone in the game. It was going to be one of those kind of smaller zones. I did find a house though, and we found a new NPC inside called the Huntress. The Huntress is going to give us a very interesting quest. It's called Brood Feast. We basically need to wipe out enemies in very specific ways to collect specific types of meat from them. For example, shredded meat, chunky meat, things like that, you know? So you need different types of meat from wiping out enemies in different ways. To do that, we need to get our hands on some tools. So we will get around to doing that quest eventually. What I also realised is that if you jump into clear, non-murky, non-maggot water, that will actually get rid of the maggot debuff as well, which is great. I finally went back to the High Halls and I took on this huge 11-wave arena. This is the final wave, and this is where most people meet their end, because you have to fight 2 of these mini-bosses at the same time. So what I did was, I saved all my cog flies until the end. Popped them all one after the next so they would do lots of damage, tried my best to avoid all of the attacks, and once I grouped up the 2 mini-bosses together, it was much easier to deal with them. The last thing you want is to be sandwiched between 2 of them. Now I had a lot of silk, so I prioritised healing over using my offensive silk abilities. I did run out of cog flies, but because there was just one of these enemies remaining, it wasn't too much of a threat, because when you get to wave 4 or 5, you end up fighting one of these anyway. When I beat this little arena, I was so happy. I finally got to talk to the conductor here, Balador, and Balador is going to teach me the final song I need to reach the very pinnacle of the Citadel and face my greatest enemies. Before I went up to the peak, I decided to complete a lot of the quests I currently had outstanding. By resting at the bench and fighting that large enemy that I just destroyed there over and over again, I found that to be the best method to get the choir cloaks. I was then off to Belhart to do some quests there. We had a quest to go and find several silver bells. That didn't take us too long to do. Once we were finished with that, we had to do a tracking quest. We had to track down an NPC by the name of Tip. As we were following the scent, we came across a couple of battles that we had to do, but we managed to do those in very quick succession because we had a much better nail and we had some pretty insane tools as well. Those cogfights are just totally overpowered. We went back to the blasted steps to talk to Grindle. Grindle has a lot of items here that we absolutely want, including a crafting kit that will increase the power of our tools. There was also a spool fragment there too that we wanted. Now we did a lot of grinding. Believe it or not, we actually had a lot of money on us, but we just had it all stringed up thanks to the numerous vendors and stringing machines you can find along your travels. So we're going to break open every single one of these strings. That Thief's Mark is a real nice tool to have. That increases the amount of rosaries you get from killing enemies. But it's a double-edged sword because you'll also lose rosaries as well when you take damage. So we found the key of the apostate here. We're going to go back to the slab, which is the prison that we ended up in after we got caught by that NPC with the big cage. There's now loads of new areas we get to explore in this slab. Lots of goodies to collect. There's also a couple of boss fights here we get to do as well, and these boss fights are absolutely insane. We are actually going to fight a boss now called the First Sinner, and this is one of the coolest boss fights in the game. As a result, I'm going to show you the entirety of the boss fight. Normally I just kind of skip through the phases with the bosses, but this fight deserves to be shown in full. It absolutely deserves it. This is one of the fastest boss fights you're going to see in this game. It is extremely fast, it is aggressive. You need to get good if you want to beat this boss into the ground. Now this boss took me a lot of attempts, but oh my goodness did I have so much fun learning this fight. By the time I finished this fight, my adrenaline was literally shooting out of my fingers and my toes. This boss is just that good, it is that entertaining. Folks, let me introduce to you the First Sinner. This boss has it all. It's fast, it's aggressive, it hits like a truck. If we want to survive, we just gotta have our wits about us. Our senses need to be sharpened to the absolute pinnacle of heights. Now this boss will summon needles, and those needles will strike in various different motions. The boss itself will also strike us with various abilities, so you just have to be really quick. Every time you get close to the boss, it will very quickly teleport away, so you literally need to dash right up into the boss's face, smack it a few times, and then get the hell out of dodge. That is how you approach this fight. You have to be fast, you have to be accurate. You also have to heal. Despite the fact that it's a really quick fight, it's actually a battle of attrition. This fight goes on for quite some time. The boss has a lot of HP. More times than not, when I end up stunning this boss, I will try my best to heal just to keep the health up. You'll be actually very surprised how quickly you can lose health in this battle, especially if you get hit with some of those needle or nail attacks, whatever you want to call them. Huge shards of despair. Now eventually what's going to happen is the boss will teleport away, and if you're not fast enough, the boss will start to heal itself. That's right. So the fight forces you to be constantly quick, to be constantly aggressive. Now when we get to this part of the fight, you think, oh, I've done it. No, you haven't. That's just the tutorial part of the fight done. This is the real fight. The boss will now summon crests that explode, very similar to the pure vessel from the first Hollow Knight game. And as we can see, sometimes the boss will teleport away and you'll see all these threads surround the boss. That means the boss is healing itself. So we need to be super quick here. Now sometimes to prevent the boss from getting in heals, I will use some of my ranged abilities. As we can see, I don't have any shards right now from the amount of times I've died on this boss. So I need to use my silk spare, and I have to use my needle as best as possible. Everything with this fight just really resonated with me. The music, the sound of all the boss's moves, the absolute intensity of this fight. And despite the fact that the boss uses quite similar attack patterns all the time, it's the absolute frequency in which they are used. Every couple of seconds, there is some sort of a claw or a nail or something that's heading your way that's going to do extreme damage if you don't dodge it. Now, as you can see, we're still using the Crest of the Wanderer because it's probably one of the fastest movesets in the game, and this is just the perfect fight for it. You'll now notice that we're in the second phase for quite a long time because it just goes to show how much HP this boss actually has. And this is why, if you end up doing this fight yourself, if you end up finishing this fight yourself, your adrenaline is going to be through the roof after it. Because you have to focus so hard for so long, it really takes a physical toll on you, and a mental toll when you finish this fight. I had to go to sleep after I finished this fight. I was actually drained from it. I went to sleep after this fight with a huge smile on my face. That's how good this fight was. This is such an awesome game. Once the fight ended, we get to pick up a new offensive Silk skill. And it's a pretty cool skill. Now, it's not something I use because it's a very, very long wind-up time, but we still needed to collect it to get 100% in-game completion. This one is called the Rune Rage. Now, we're not finished with the slab just yet. We did get another quest to fight another boss here. I think the quest was called Wailing Mother. So that's just the Rune Rage there in effect. As you can see, it's a fairly long wind-up time, and a lot of fights in this game would not give you that opportunity. Now, this boss in particular was fairly simple to do. I mean, after taking on the first sinner, this fight was more or less a cakewalk, you know? You're not really going to get a fight faster than that of the first sinner. That fight was just fast, intense. It was such a great experience. I really hope they add more fights to the game later on that are quite similar to that of the first sinner. I mean, who needs roller coasters? We could just fight the first sinner over and over again, you know? So we just beat the Brute Mother there. Now, that is an entirely different Brute Mother to the one you fight in the first Hollow Knight game, and because they shared the same name, I thought after I beat it, it was going to explode with insects coming out of it, like the first one did, but it didn't, thankfully. What I'm doing here now is a very difficult platforming section, where you have to constantly pogo off that blade there. You have to be very accurate with it. The prize was worth the effort though. We now get our hands on another mask shard. So we're just going to donate 440 shards here to complete Icon of Hope for the Bone Bottom Town. And all these quests are something that we have to do to get 100% game completion. There was also a moss fly as well that had a moss berry. That was one more moss berry added to the list for us. And I believe that was all of the moss berries now that I have found. So because we found all 6 or 7 of them, our Druid's Eye tool gets a slight upgrade. So the amulet now weeps way more green elixir when we take damage. That means when we take a couple of hits, we get back more silk. We went back to Belhart, we spoke to Pavo, and we now have a house to call our very own. There's also a quest here as well called My Missing Brother, and this quest is given to us by Tip. We need to find his brother, and once that brother has been found, that's going to unlock courier side quests for us. So this is our cozy little home at the moment, and eventually we're going to get a very useful item that will show us our game completion. We can also add a spa to this house, we can add furniture to this house, we can get it painted. There's loads we can do to it. We're now going to talk with Mushka here, and we're going to travel with the flea caravan to a new location. They're in Greymore at the moment. Now they're going to travel up to the entrance to the Citadel. And once we find more fleas up here, we'll travel to one more location after this, and that one will be called Fleetopia. So we just handed in 2 quests there. We got back 2 heavy rosary necklaces as a reward, which was absolutely amazing. But I still needed a lot more money if I'm going to get all of the tools needed in this game. There's so many things locked behind money. It's the one thing I kind of don't like about this game. You didn't really have that in the first one. I mean, if you take a look at the vendors here, there's so many tools and items they have that are locked behind huge amounts of rosaries. So I just picked up another capacitor there for my silk, which was great. I'm now doing a tracking quest. This quest has taken us back to the beautiful location of Sinner's Road. We're looking for an NPC by the name of Phil. So it didn't take us too long to find Phil. Now what's very interesting about this area is because now that we have most of the transversal techniques, we actually found a house up here on the top right hand side of an area in Sinner's Road. Cruel and Benjamin will give us a quest here called Roach Guts. Now the quest is quite simple. we have to fight those roaches that I also hate a number of times, collect guts from them. Once we have enough guts acquired, we can turn it in and we get back a fierce cooler tool. Because we had the double jump ability, we can also access a new area inside Sinner's Road. So what we have to do here is we have to strike the gong. This is going to start a fight with some very angry flies, and they do not want to give up their food that easily. So this is something we have to do to complete that quest that's called Great Taste of Barloom. So once we complete this gauntlet here, or this arena, we are going to get one of those food items. But it's not going to be that easy, because this disgraced chef, Lugoli, is not going to give up that pickled muck maggot without a fight. Now as fights go, this fight was simple enough. I mean, my poisonous cogflies did huge amounts of damage. The only thing is that when you sit on a bench to restock your cogflies, they use up huge amounts of shards. So I only primarily use them when I'm in a tough spot or when I'm fighting a boss, you know? I wouldn't really take them out against enemies unless I'm in a real pickle. No pun intended. So we're going to go back, talk to the NPCs here. We just completed the Roach Gust's Wish. That is going to give us a very powerful tool known as the Tax. Now, the Tax are extremely good against ground adversaries. Unfortunately, most of the enemies you fight in this game aren't grounded. They've got some sort of, you know, flight ability. We can now take on some courier quests. Now, these quests are not required to get 100% in-game completion. I just did a few of them at the time, just to experience everything there is to experience with Hollow Knight SilkSong. So, the way the quests work are that you have to go from one location to the other without taking huge amounts of damage. If you do, the item you're carrying will simply break. If you use the fast travel or the terminals, it will also break. So you have to travel there manually. We just picked up a Hornet statue from delivering all those goods to the NPC there. Now, the Queen's Egg apparently is a quest that you have to do to get 100% in-game completion. So we're going to go back to Styx. We just delivered the egg. I believe this will increase the speed in which you get your hands on some lovely morsels, so we can get some lovely silk eaters. We're now going back to the Blasted Steppes. Because we have our lovely grappling ability, we can now access a new area, and this area is called the Sands of Curragh. Now, this area is actually quite hard to traverse. You have to strike those plants, and you're given a very limited window to jump and pogo off these platforms before they disintegrate. We met Chakra up here as well, and we purchased another map off her along with some venture pins. Those pins will come in very handy for roaming around the Citadel as well later on. There's lots of goodies that we need now to get 100% game completion in this zone. There's a food that we need for the food quest. We just rescued a flea there as well. There's enemies that we have to fight to update the Hunter's Journal. Now on that part, you don't need 100% on the Hunter's Journal to get 100% in-game completion. But if you want to get all of the Steam achievements or all of the PlayStation trophies or whatever device you're using, then you will have to fully complete the Hunter's Journal. So we just picked up the crest nut there. That was one more food item needed, the Great Taste of Barloom. It was now time to fight the Raging Contrite, and this guy is a survivor from the previous fight. Despite the fact that there's only one of them, mark my words, this fight is much harder, because this Contrite will summon little minions, and they'll turn into missiles and they'll try to strike us. So we need a lot of focus to dodge all of their attacks. This Contrite will also attack us way more frequently, and he's also way faster. I suppose he's raging that we're after beating up his mate. Now, it only took me a few attempts to beat this fight. It wasn't that difficult, especially if you compare it to the likes of Phantom or the First Sinner, especially the First Sinner. All these bosses seem a little bit slow, you know, because the First Sinner was such a fast fight. I also found a cool little location here. Inside, I picked up a tool called the Conch Cutter. Now, we will have to come back here later on, and we will have to do a fair school boss fight here, but for now, we don't have the ability to access that fight, but we will get those abilities later. So I went back to the deep docks here. I'm going to use my simple key, and this is going to give me access to the rest of the deep docks area. Because I had my grappling hook ability, I was able to access some other areas of this place as well. So the arena here was quite tough. Those big enemies were throwing explosives at me, and I actually died once doing this because the explosion that happened at the end, that got me the first time and it killed me. I'm now doing a very difficult platforming section. Now because I have most of the transversal abilities, it wasn't that bad, but what really got me a couple of times doing this were the boulders falling out from the ceiling. If they hit you, they do at least 2 masks of damage, and as we can see, I just had 1 mask left. I really didn't want to die and do it all over again. So long story short, I died. I had to do it all over again. But look, I managed to get to the end without too much hassle. It was then time to do yet another little arena at this location. There was more kind of bell humanoids that I had to fight. Now a lot of these humanoids were fairly easy to deal with because I had the grappling hook and because I had the cogflies. So we're rescuing more fleas now, which is great. Believe it or not, there's actually only a handful of fleas left in the game. So we're fighting 4 Brother Cygnus here. This is a very cool fight. Once we get into phase 2 of this fight, Cygnus will summon his friend, and we have to fight 2 bosses at the same time. So when that happens, take my advice, you want to wipe out Cygnus as quickly as possible. He'll also summon little adds to help him as well. Now, because a lot of his attacks are fire based, and because sometimes you can hit off the lava if you're repelled backwards, putting on that magma ward tool comes in as a real lifesaver because you only take 1 mask of damage and not 2. Now, I ended up zorging Cygnus into the ground. I didn't really care I was taking extra damage. I just wanted to get a few masks on and just hit him as quickly as I could with my nail to get rid of him so I could just focus on 1 boss and not 2. So for the great majority of this fight, I wasn't really trying to dodge a lot of his attacks. Sure, I tried to dodge a few, but I was more interested in just piling on the attacks and getting rid of him as quickly as possible. Once I had him destroyed, it was then a one-on-one battle between me and Gron. Gron was simple to deal with. All he done was just hover around, threw a spear at me. It was just, hit him a few times with the needle and that was it. So I finally got access here to a brand new zone, and there was these big giant blob enemies I have to fight. They were very hard to deal with because they just spewed out so much projectiles at you. I found this old diving bell. This isn't something I can use right now, but mark my words, we're going to use this later on, and you're in for the big treat if you're a fan of the first Hollow Knight game. So we finally went back to Shellwood, and I spoke to Greymore here, and I finally figured out what I had to do with this twisted bud. Greymore wanted me to hand over the bud and participate in some sort of a rite. What I didn't know was that this rite was going to severely mess up my character. Now thankfully, there is a cure for this. Unfortunately, after I had completed this quest, I then realized that there is an achievement you can do by beating the last boss in this cursed state. So I went up to the very top of Greymore. I found a little house here. Yarnaby is a new NPC that resides within. I told Yarnaby that I wanted to get this twisted bud out of my body so I can get back to normal. That won't be a problem for good old Yarnaby here. So we're going to have to go on a little bit of a quest, but first there was a location just north of Yarnaby's house where I can use a craft metal and I can craft a tool here called Pimpolo. And that was just 1 more tool needed. Now before I went and got this curse taken out of my body, I decided to go back to the Citadel and play a lovely tune for the statues. After the tune was played, I was able to take the elevator and go all the way up into the Cradle area. Now before we fight the kind of main boss of this game, we have to fight Lace 1 more time. I gave her a couple of goes and she kind of got the better of me, so I decided to just leave it, go back down, do some more exploration, and come back up at a later stage. The only reason I'm showing this now is because you want to get to see this little cool cutscene once, and it's a very cool hand-drawn cutscene, and I have to really give a shout out here to the developers. They're just so goddamn talented when it comes to the hand art of this game. There's no AI generative stuff here, people. This is just beautiful handcrafted art. This is as natural as it comes. I wasn't expecting a fight straight off the bat with Lace once I went up the elevator, so I was taken a bit off surprise with this the first time, Now, Lace is much faster than that of the first version, but we do get killed by her, but we'll fight her again later on once we've done a couple of more quests. So we just spoke to Benjamin there and Grunt. We got the spines needed for Yarnaby to perform the surgery to take this horrendous twisted thing out of our body so we can get all of our movesets right back to normal again. Now, despite the fact that I'm not going to get that cursed child achievement in this run, we can still get 100% in-game completion We also got the crest of the witch as well from this, and we wouldn't have been able to get 100% game completion without that crest, so it was necessary to do it anyway. So we're just spending some more time here now farming enemies for rosaries so I can purchase up the rest of the tools that are accessible to me. Once I dominated these enemies a handful of times, I went back down and spoke to an NPC known as the 12th Architect. I now had enough rosaries, more than enough, at over 5,000 rosaries, to purchase all of these lovely items. Now, a lot of these items I don't actually use, but it just begs the question, you know, if I ever do another playthrough of this, I will absolutely change my tools around to see if it changes up the experience. Once I was finished with the 12th Architect, I went over to Grindle here and I purchased all of the things he had as well. I even went to the halfway home here in Greymore. I spoke to Craig and I purchased his premium wine that I needed for the food quest. Now, I couldn't just grab this wine, I had to do a little bit of a fight here to get it. So apparently he had an ant infestation and he didn't tell me about it. It was actually a very funny dialogue. Now, as you've probably noticed, and we're a good bit now into this video, I don't show a whole lot of the dialogue. So if you're looking for lore, you'll probably figure it out by now, you're not going to get it in this video. But I'm sure there's videos out there that will explain all the lore to you. This video is just basically showcasing me getting 100% in-game completion. So once we wiped out all the ants, we got the vintage nectar, which was great. I also picked up a quest here as well from Chakra called Trail's End. This quest requires me to go through Sinner's Road into Boilwater and find her up in a new location. Now, because I had a lot of money left over, I decided to purchase a couple of decorations for my home. Now, as far as I know, you don't need to purchase any of those decorations to get any sort of achievements. I just wanted to get them because I could. So I went back up to the Great Citadel, spoke to Lord Murgwin here, gave him all of the food items that I got throughout my quests, and the final dish was finally made. All we had to do now was sit back and relax and watch his master come out and make a great feast of this. Now, when the master did come out to eat this, I thought for sure it was going to be some sort of a boss battle, because this thing was the absolute stuff of nightmares. I mean, just look at it. Fortunately for us, we don't actually have to fight this. Now, in all fairness, we did have to fight a lot of things to get those recipes, you know? So the master here was absolutely delighted from the feast. As a reward, we got another pale oil. So we'll bring that down to Belheart now in a second. We'll get our nail upgraded even further. So we're now doing the quest to get organs for the Huntress down in the Putrefied Ducts, which just means that we have to wipe out these enemies using a combination of tools. It doesn't take us too long to do it because I just keep resting at the bench and I found these two enemies over and over again. With the cogwheel, I think we have to use the stink shards as well, and we have to use the flint to add fire elemental damage to our weapon. It literally took me about 10 minutes, I'd say, to complete the whole thing in real life. So I gave all the organs to the Huntress. That was the Broodfist quest done, and I got a really cool tool here. I got the Long Claw. It increases the range of my weapon, and that will actually come in very handy for a couple of boss fights that we do later on. I finally found Chakra here, up in Boilwater, and she found her master. Chakra wanted to thank me for sharing this moment with her, so I was rewarded with another very powerful tool. I was going to get the throwing rings that Chakra uses all the time when she's in combat. So that was one more tool done and dusted. It was now finally time to go back to this horrendous gauntlet and fight Ground Great. Now, I was in a much better position this time because I had a lot more abilities, I had more masks, and I had a stronger weapon. So it was just a matter of dodging his abilities, get close to him, hit him a few times, and then back off. Now, he actually almost kills me because I end up jumping on his head and striking downward multiple times, but this guy can actually attack upwards, and that really threw me off. So I took a lot of damage here by jumping on him. I had 2 masks left, but I said, you know what, for what it's worth, I hit him with a Silk Spear, and lo and behold, it finished the job. God, I love Silk Spear so much. When I finished him off, a bench popped up. Now, I was kind of on my toes when I sat in this bench, and I managed to get the Secret Soul in the next room, which was great. I also used the Architect's key as well because I had accumulated so many tools, so I could buy that from the 12th Architect, and I opened up a vault here which is very close to the 12th Architect's location. I got into a location here called the Chapel of the Architect, and inside we are going to bind another crest to ourselves, and this is called the Crest of the Architect. Now, this is a very interesting quest in that if you run out of tools during combat, you can actually burn through shards and you can craft more tools on the fly. So if you ever wanted to do a tool heavy build, that's the way to go. Before we knew it, we were more or less finished up with everything we could do in Act 2, so it was time now to go and fight Lace. I found that the best tactic for her was to hit her, run away, and just rinse and repeat, you know. After you get a couple of attacks in, you will stun her, and when she lets out the battle cry there, and when she does her little mad dash just like that, that's a great opportunity to get a few more hits in as well. And you have to be very careful about jumping on her head, doing some downward spins, because she can very easily launch herself up into the air. And even her regular attacks, as you can see, they do cover the huge area around her, so you just have to be very careful when you are attacking her. Now, it didn't take us too many attempts to actually beat her. She wouldn't be the hardest boss in the game, but she was still a whole lot of fun. Once Lace has been defeated, we can now head up and we can fight the big baddie of this entire video. So this is just my understanding of the story, but as we know, Hornet was born of Rim and Weaver, so she's a very rare type and she can produce Silk. And Silk is something that the final boss here, you know, wants badly. So I think we're basically the granddaughter of the last boss that we have to fight. And there's a couple of choices you can make towards the end of the game. When we get to the end, I'll explain what those choices mean and what we have to do to get the multiple endings. So we did a couple of platforming bits. We got up here. Now we get to fight this boss. So this is Grandmother Silk, and the name gives it away, you know, she's your grandmother. Your actual mother perished in the first game, Hollow Knight. But she did for good reason, you know, she did it to save Hollow Nest. But you know what? If you want to know more about that, go to the first game. This is the Grandmother Silk fight. This is an absolutely amazing fight, but it is nowhere near the intensity of that of the first Sinner. It's kind of like a slowed down version of it in a way, though she doesn't teleport, she just kind of hovers around the place. She does have a silk attack there, where if you get caught with that, she will deal at least 2, even 3 points of damage to you. So that's something you absolutely want to avoid. She will occasionally, throughout the whole fight, fire those needles at you. They're fairly easy to dodge. Now, her first phase is quick enough. She goes down after a couple of smacks. The second phase is where things get a little bit more dicey. She will bring debris down right upon your head, so this will really limit the room that you have in which you can move. She'll also get a lot more aggressive when it comes to the silk attacks. As we can see, she just spun 2 webs there. We managed to dodge it. She'll also bring spikes up from the ground as well, quite similar to the Radiant fight. This is just another fight of attrition really. You know, you're spending most of your time dodging the attacks. You can get a few strikes in when you can. You don't actually have to jump up to hit her head, you can actually hit her belly easily enough. And if you have the long claw tool that increases the range of your weapon, you can do most of your strikes just standing around on the ground. So the long claw can really help in this fight as well if you want to get more strikes in. Now we end up using our tools here towards the end just to dish out the last few pieces of damage. We then get to stick our lovely needle inside her face and absorb all of her silk. So this is going to be the first of many endings that you get to experience in this video. You'll also notice on the top left, my silk bar has gotten way bigger because I'm just absorbing so much silk from her. And this is the first ending. I was actually really happy when I got this ending, but it's a little bit depressing. I'm not going to say anything else, just watch it for yourself and enjoy. And it is back to the grind. As you can see, we're 55 hours in right now, and there's still a long way to go. There is still a lot to do to get 100% in-game completion on this game. Now, there's actually what people are calling a secret act in this game. It's called Act 3, but you can't just bounce into Act 3. There's a lot of things you have to do to get Act 3. The first thing we're going to do now is insert the cogwork heart into this NPC here, into this robot. Now, this is something you can do before you fight Grandmother Silk. this is a fight that you can do. This is called a second sentinel. So once we activate this sentinel, it will go around the Great Citadel and it will help you fight the enemies within. We still need to find all of the 18 Spool fragments to get 100% completion. We have to find all the fleas, all the mask shards, all the tools, and we have to beat the rest of the bosses. We also have to unlock the last few endings as well. Now that tool there, the Wreath of Purity, I wish I'd gotten that way earlier in the challenge. I found a secret area up here in the putrefied ducts. To get up here, I had to let this enemy grab me with its tentacles, and I had to release myself when I was high enough, so I could transverse my way right down to this zone where I had to get grabbed with another tentacle. It was basically rinse and repeat of getting grabbed with tentacles before we found a lovely secret flea. That's right, there's a big secret NPC up here. His name is Vogue, and Vogue will actually sell us maps with the locations of the fleas we haven't found yet. So it's just a way that allows us to find the rest of the fleas without literally banging our heads off a brick wall, because this game is just so big. So as we can see, Vogue just had 3 maps: the Bylands, Mount Fae, and the Citadel. Now he would have more if there were fleas in those locations, but I've been pretty thorough with going through these locations. I've been striking every wall I see, but despite that, I'm still missing a few. So praise be to Yevon for those lovely maps. I also got a tool pouch expansion as well for finding a lot of the fleas, which was great. I finally picked up a quest here called Silk and Soul. So to start off this quest, we have to talk to the caretaker. And the caretaker is going to give us an alternative method of ending Grandmother Silk. Because at the end of the day, Hornet wants freedom, you see. She doesn't want to be the next big pale monarch and reign down over Farloom. She wants to be free. And that is what we're going to try to do right now. We're going to build a trap. It's going to suck the Silk Mother straight into the void, so her curse will no longer be over this land. We won't have any haunted corpses running around the place. Malnourished zones. Hopefully the land of Farloom can go back to normality. So we're going to head down to Eva here. This is back in the Weave Nest Alta. She's going to give us what's called a Vesti Crest. Now, a Vesti Crest is basically a crest that can be used with all of your crests. It's just an additional slot, similar to the charm notches from the first Hollow Knight. And because we received so many memory lockets, and because we wiped up so many bosses, she's going to upgrade our Vesti Crest twice. So there are 2 additional items we can now equip to Hornet, making her way more versatile. We also need a lot of souls to make this big trap, to trap the Silk Mother. So we just got the Maiden Soul there. We also went underneath Bellheart and we spoke to the Bell Hermit. He's going to give us the Hermit Soul. We also picked up the Snare Setter from the Weave Nest Alta. We're going to give all these things to the caretaker. And what's going to happen now is the caretaker is going to set up a trap at the location where we first fought the Silk Mother. So we have to fight her again. But this time when we beat her, we're going to have an option. We can become the Pale Monarch ourselves, which will trigger the first ending that we saw. Or we can activate the trap, which will trigger an additional ending. Now, I'm not going to show this fight again because we've already seen it. Nothing changes. It's the exact same mechanics as the last time. So we're going to go ahead, fight her, but this time if we hold down triangle, because I have a PlayStation controller, we're going to use the needle instead. And this is going to activate the Soul Snare. So this is going to summon up the void. All those lovely tendrils are going to wrap themselves around Grandmother Silk and they're going to drag her right down into nothingness. Now what happens here was that she actually grabs me, but look who comes along and saves the day. It was Lace, because at the end of the day, she doesn't want Silk Mother to gain our power. So Lace sacrificed herself to save me, but that's what she wanted. She always wanted to get back at the Silk Mother, you know, from the way she was treated, from the way she was brought up. So that was just some good old revenge there from Lace. So this is just another ending now that we activated. Enjoy. It was finally time to head back into the game, but this time the save file was a bit different. I had to tap it multiple times to actually get in. I thought that was pretty cool. When I saw the question marks, I was just so intrigued as to what was going to happen next. It was just one of those moments where you thought to yourself, how long is this game? How much did they pack into this game? No wonder it took them 6 or 7 years to build. Just look at the amount of content they've put in. Look how finely tuned this game actually is. I mean, if there's AAA developers watching this, just take a good look, everyone. Take a good look, AAA developers. This is how you develop a game. Act 3, The Abyss. We're going to bind our needle back to us. Now, we have all of our masks. We have everything that we've worked hard to get. But we have new objectives. We now have to save Farloom from the void. A lot of the enemies you fight in Act 3 keep the same movesets, but they also gain additional moves if they get void abilities. And as far as I know, the void abilities are fairly random. Now, these void abilities will hit you like absolute trucks, so you gotta watch out. So these enemies also have a lot more HP as well, so the majority of enemies you fight now, even when you're just wandering around the place, are a tad bit harder to kill. And this is just a taste of what's to come. We're going to have to fight some super bosses if we want to 100% this game, and some of these bosses require a lot of dedication. Saved by the lovely Sharma, thank you so much. But look at our lovely first shrine. It has been decimated by rubble. Fortunately enough, that will not stop the lovely boards from obtaining new wishes. Act 3 is absolutely huge. It is as chunky as Act number 2. And that's why this video is so long. Now, I went to go to my fast travel station, but instead of my lovely beautiful bell beast to pop up, a huge giant centipede popped up instead, and it didn't give me a very nice greeting at all. So, if we want to get our fast travel back, we're going to have to show this bell eater who the boss is. Now, this fight was actually pretty fun. There's 2 areas you can attack. You can attack its head, and you can also attack its bottom. Now, I didn't have any shards on me, and the only reason I'm using this tool right now is because after you obtain a tool, you end up getting maybe 6 or 7 pieces of that tool, or depending on what the tool's capacity is. So I was literally just toggling through tools, trying them all out, because I just didn't have the motivation right now to farm shards to fight these bosses. I figured if I ran out of tools, I would just use my needle and my sync skills to get it done. Now, it took me a few attempts to get this fight done with. It was actually fairly hard to dodge all those balls that came out of its bottom, but eventually I found a really good tool here that would hit the head and the bottom at the same time because it exploded. So it was a great time to use that tool when the 2 parts almost met. Now, I can't speak on behalf of the developers, but I wouldn't be surprised if they took inspiration from the human centipede when they were making this boss, based on the parts you have to attack and based on certain boss mechanics. At the end of the fight, you get the coolest scene. Your lovely good friend Bellbeast comes along and shows the centipede who the big baddie is around the fast travel parts. This was just such an awesome fight, and it was so nice to see that human centipede head just pop up out of the ground when the Bellbeast was done. And not only that, we are now going to get a big reward from our good friend, the Bellbeast. It's time to sing a fabulous song together. But look what happened. The Bellbeast had babies, and not just one baby. The Bellbeast had a whopping 4 babies. So she's going to be a busy mother trying to keep all those babies fed. But we also learned an incredible song here, and this song is just totally overpowered. It's called the Beastly Call. And we can use this in most areas of the game. I'd say 90%, 95% of the areas of the game, where it'll bring us back to the last fast travel station we rested at. Now, I started to explore the map all over again. You're still given full access to the map in Act 3. There is nowhere you cannot go, and I mean nowhere. I was actually surprised a bit when the Moss Mother came back, but this time it was like a void version of it, so it was a little bit harder, but not super hard. I don't think I got anything for beating this fight, but it was cool to experience the encounter again, and we just saw the few extra void abilities that she did have, you know? Now, I did go to a lot of other locations expecting other bosses to be reborn, but they weren't. Not yet anyway. Maybe they'll add a DLC in the future, and they'll re-add a load of bosses in Act 3. So I finally found the Caretaker, and I found the rest of the shamans, and they all looked totally different. Now, Hornet was very displeased in terms of what happened, but the shaman said that Hornet should have known better, especially considering the background that they come from, you know, that they do specialise in traps like that trigger the void. So I needed to go down to the void, and I had to try to talk to the Silk Mother to get her to stop retaliating. so I needed a device to bring me down there. So we went down to the deep docks, we spoke to the Forge daughter, she introduced us to Willow, he gave us a key to go to this diving bell. Remember the diving bell we came across there about a half hour, an hour ago into the video? We now get to use it, and this is going to bring us right down into the abyss. And what's really cool about this abyss is that it's quite similar to the abyss from Hollow Knight, so it was very nostalgic for me when this actually happened. So our bell diving experience didn't really go the way we had planned, but at least we survived the encounter. Unfortunately, we won't be able to use this device to get back up. We're going to have to find a different way. Thus begins our new adventure in a new map called The Abyss. Now, this place is very similar to The Abyss in the first Hollow Knight in terms of the enemies that you fight, but it also has new enemies here as well. So those little darkened grubs there, you get to fight those in the first one. When I saw those, I got very excited because I thought it was going to bring us back to the exact same abyss as the first game, but it doesn't. This abyss is a little bit different. Now, when I saw that enemy, I mean, that's the stuff for nightmares right there. I mean, its head literally explodes and loads of ooze comes out of it, and even some of that. It was almost like fighting a mini-boss, you know? I do beat it, just to add it to the Hunter's Journal, but I wasn't a fan to fight those things a second time round. So after doing a lot of transversal, we eventually come to an area here where we're going to learn an incredible move. And once this move is learned, there is absolutely nowhere we cannot go when it comes to traversing the map of Hollow Knight SilkSong. Speaking of maps, we just picked up the Abyss map there, which was nice. So we finally got down to the very bottom of the Abyss. It was now time for Hornet to have a conversation with the Silk Mother. Here you lie, monarch, sunk so deep, yet still you cling to life. Would you let your lands be cloaked black to protect just her? So the Silk Mother is actually protecting Lace. So she actually cares about Lace. She doesn't want harm to come to her. So our quest is now made crystal clear. We need to find a way to jump into that void and pull Lace out and save her. If we can do that, the Silk Mother will pass away in peace. Hence, Farloom won't be riddled with void anymore. So that's what we have to do now. So we now need to go find this item called the Bloom, which will allow us to transverse the void, and then we can try to save Lace. But in order for us to get this Bloom, we're going to have to fight some very difficult bosses. We're going to have to do some very difficult things. But first, let's use our needling, break down this door, and get our very last transversal silk skill. This one is known as the Silk Soar, and it's basically a super jump. Similar to the crystal jump from the first Hollow Knight, this one, however, goes in a vertical motion. That's right. As long as your needle can pierce the ceiling, and your needle goes up a fierce long way, you will soar all the way up to the top. Using this ability, we can now access huge amounts of areas in the game. We also picked up the Far Sight. We can assemble that back in our bell home, and that will basically tell us how much of completion we actually have done. So once that gets to 100%, we'll be finished with this video. Now at the end of the day, we entered a new zone. We weren't met with huge hardships up until now. This place is not going to let us go without a fight. Once that music kicked in the background, I knew something was coming. I knew something hard was coming. I started to make my way up, and then everything started to shake, the lava started coming down, and I knew exactly what was going to happen here. I knew it was going to be another race against time, and this lava was going to surge right up and try to claim my soul. So what we're going through now is a very difficult platforming challenge, and it took me a lot of tries to actually get this done, but it was just so entertaining. Now the lava isn't chasing us right now. What's going to happen eventually is we're going to strike that ceiling there twice from 2 different points. A big chunk of rock then is going to hit into the lava, and that's going to send the lava spiraling upwards, which is what is happening right now. So we need to use all of our abilities. As you can see there, I just reclaimed my cocoon because I died there the last time when I was trying to break this thing open. For some reason it just wouldn't explode the last time, and the lava eventually killed me off. But now I had a new opportunity to go even higher. I had to break these walls very quickly, and then I didn't have a whole lot of time to think, So instead of pogoing off those enemies, I just used the super jump and I got up real high with it, which was great. All of these walls I had to bounce off were all like breakable walls, so once you landed on one, it would break and it would rebuild itself within a couple of seconds. This is a real cool scene here. I thought for a split second the lava was going to get me because it just looked that way, you know? So we made it out by literally the skin of our teeth. So it was just another really cool scene there that I got to witness towards the end of the game. It was also nice to see that Ballo got that bell back out of the lava and he's going to repair it. I then went back and I spoke to the snail shamans. I said, look at here, I need to get a bloom, I need items which will allow me to kind of go back in time, visit people's memories, visit people's dreams, and get the item, because that's the only place we could get it, as of this moment in time, the bloom no longer existed. So we learned a new ability here called Elegy of the Deep, and similar to the Dream Nail in Hollow Knight, this item will allow us enter the dreams of certain NPCs or certain locations. Inside those dreams will be great challenges. We've got, you know, Heart of the Might and other hearts that we have to collect, 3 hearts in total. Once we have those obtained, we can then get the bloom and we can then take on some of the hardest bosses in the game. Or one of the hardest bosses in the game, I should say. Couple of quests here. Fatal Resolve, Dark Arts, and there was also a sprinting competition as well, which was a whole lot of fun. The first thing we're going to do anyway is head back to the house, and we're going to assemble that far side that we picked up once we've unlocked all of these quests. I was very curious to see how much game completion I had actually attained right now. And to my surprise, it was actually fairly high, but there was still a lot of work to be done. There was still a lot of max shards to be found, a lot of tools to be located. But the far side was a wonderful tool that would basically tell us what we're missing. So the flea map finally kicked in, and as we can see, there was a flea there in boiled water. There was a flea I had to get up in Mount Fay as well, and there was a flea somewhere else too that we had to nab. Once we nabbed those fleas, that would have been all the fleas got. So we did that very quickly. We went around to all the maps. That was the flea from boiled water. I also found a location here using the super jump. It was a little house, but this house was basically just a shortcut to bring us back into the exhaust organ. I found another flea there by Sinner's Road, which was nice. I then finally decided to pull up a guide to look up areas that I might have missed, and I never would have found this place. This was known as the Wisp Thicket. Trust me when I say I never would have found this place. It was well hidden up at the very top of Greymore. We needed to come here for a couple of reasons. We needed the map of this place to get the achievement to get all of the maps. We also needed to fight all the enemies here. There was a boss here as well we had to fight. I think there was a flea hiding here too. There was a cracked metal here. And there was some other bits and bobs that we had to get here as well. It wasn't the biggest zone, but it was packed full of goodies that we wanted to grab. But look what it also had. It had the lovely maggot water. Of course it did. You know, half the zones have this stuff, which I'm not a fan of. So we just picked up another mask shard here, which was nice. 2 more mask shards to go. Another piece of full health, but there's still 4 mask shards to go after that, so 6 in total. Now this boss was fairly simple. The boss had 4 weak points you had to strike over and over again while dodging those fireballs that came at you. Now those fireballs were more or less homing fireballs, but because we had the double jump, they were fairly easy to dodge. Once all of those weak points were destroyed, it was just a matter of attacking the boss's core after it finished firing all these random fireballs at us. So it was just rinse and repeat, and that's all this boss did. So between the double jump and our other abilities that we had to move around in the air, that was easy enough to beat this boss. It just took me 2 attempts and I had it done. Now when this boss was defeated, it dropped a really cool tool. Now it's a tool I don't really use because it uses up silk and I need silk for heals. This tool basically is called the Wisp Fire Lantern, and it sends out a little wisp provided you have silk to do so. It would be very good on a run where you didn't have to heal much, so if you're really good at fighting bosses, it would come in very handy then. So another craft metal was gotten there, which was great. That will be needed to assemble more tools as we go, so we're not finished yet with the tools. So we just found another flea right here, and this was the last flea that we needed. All of the fleas have now been successfully rescued, and because of that, we can go back here to the caravan and we can talk to Mushka, and they're going to celebrate. We also get the egg of Flelia as well, and it's quite a cool tool. Provided our health is full, it will reduce the cost of silk skills. So you can actually make very, very powerful builds with that, especially if you get a certain crest that we're going to grab later on. Speaking of quests, we have another one here to destroy these big amalgamations of void mass. I think we had to kill a total of 10 of those for the quest complete. We're going to take another quest here now called a Hero's Call. And a lot of these quests now are going to lead to very difficult fights. But first, we absolutely want to get back our lovely pin master, Finley. We need our needle to be upgraded again. I think maybe once or twice we can get it upgraded. That's going to make it way stronger. We need the full upgrade if we're going to tackle all of the end game content. So we just done a little bit of an arena fight here. We've rescued Finley, told him to get back to his hut and start upgrading needles, and we now have more quests that we can take on here from the first shrine. We have Final Audience, so we have to talk to the Sentinel there, and then we have Pain, Anguish, and Misery. The Tormented one. That, my friends, is going to be a rematch with Trobio. We also spoke to the Green Prince here as well, and there's actually a very sad story between the Green Prince and the Cogwork dancers that we have been fighting. But first, we're going to go here and talk to this Cogwork Sentinel. And this is the Sentinel that we restored by doing all of the puzzles there a while back to get all of the heart pieces. Long story short, the Sentinel here is confused. It thinks we're now an enemy, it thinks we're tainted. And the only way we can prove our innocence is through a trial through combat. Now, he beat me the first time because I wasn't used to his moves, but we did get the better of him the second time around. We went back, activated all of our lovely cog flies, and we made very short work of him in no time at all. It was a pretty cool fight now, to be fair. A lot of his attacks are pretty cool. That big cross slash he does though, that's absolutely lethal, and sometimes it can be difficult to dodge. This quest, and trust me when I say this, is well worth your time to do, because we get one of the best tools in the game. Now, in my opinion, I think it's one of the best tools in the game once we complete this fight. We get what's called the Reserve Bind, and it does exactly what it says it does on the tin. It's a Reserve Bind. So every time we sit on the bench, it will refresh itself. It just gives us one extra bind before we sit back down on the bench and reset it. It comes in real handy later on in certain boss battles when you need to heal but you don't have enough silk to do so. So that tool is something that we're now going to equip straight away without a shadow of a thought. We also went back to the high halls by using our simple key. Inside was a room filled up to the top with rosaries and chests. Now, there's also a tool you can get in here as well. I don't get the tool this time around because I didn't know a tool was in here. It's a little bit hidden, so we end up coming back later on to grab it. We also picked up a pale rosary necklace. That gives us a lot of rosaries. Speaking of which, we had to give Finley here a lot of rosaries to get our needles sharpened. We just need one more upgrade now to fully max on our needle, and to get that upgrade, we have to take part in the Festival of the Flea. This will only activate when you have found all of the fleas in the game. Now, this festival is pretty cool. You have to play 3 minigames and you have to get first place in each one to get the last pale oil to fully upgrade the needle. Each minigame is quite fun except the juggling minigame. Oh my god, that minigame took me hours to do. It was hard, to say the least. I had to watch so many videos on YouTube of people doing it to get tips. So the first one is just called Bounce, and this one's easy enough, you know, you just have to bounce off the enemies a good handful of times until you get first place. And if you've been bouncing off enemies the same way I've been bouncing off enemies, this will come fairly natural. Once we're finished with the Bounce challenge, it was time to move on to the Dodger challenge. Again, this one was simple, and because we had all of the transversal abilities, sometimes we did take a hit from these fleas, but it was very easy to get back up onto the platform. If you get removed from the platform and hit the ground, you'll fail. But if you get hit, there's still a chance you can recover. So I just got up to 90 there and I just jumped off to end it. Now this challenge, the juggling, was fierce hard. We had to score something like 32 points to get first place. We had to strike these fleas a total of 3 times to score 1 point. It's easy enough if there's just 1 or 2 fleas, but sometimes there could be 3 or 4 fleas that you have to juggle. If a flea falls on the ground, you'll get a strike. If you get 3 strikes, you're out and you have to start all over again. It was a fierce hard challenge. I mean fierce hard. I had to get a specific setup for this, so I used my usual Crest of Vulnerability, but I also used the Long Claw, so I had that little extra bit of reach. When I completed all of the bonus games, it was finally time to break open this big, huge balloon, and look what I got inside. Huge amounts of rosaries, but also the final pale oil needed to get my final weapon upgrade. And that was another wish done. SSC of the end. It was just so much fun. The amount of work the developers put into this game is just absolutely unreal. It deserves Game of the Year. It's actually a tough question. Either this or Expedition 33 deserves Game of the Year in my opinion. Maybe this game a little bit more. I don't know though, it's a hard one. Anyway, back to the game. So we finally got the final needle upgrade done here. Sometimes I know I might call it nail, it's just a bad habit from Hollow Knight. We all know it's a needle that Hornet wields. It was now time to take on another wish here. It was time for a rematch with the wonderful... Oh, he says it way better than me. But this time our lovely Trobio was tormented. Didn't take the first beating too well, you know. This version of Trobio was way harder. Way more aggressive. His attacks were way faster. He had way more HP. It took me a lot of attempts to beat this fight, but by God, what a fun fight it actually was. Now, his movesets were quite similar to that of the first Trobio. Just take a look at the colours involved in this fight. The amount of effort the developers had to do for this fight was absolutely insane. I mean, when you look at a fight like this, you can tell how much love they put into this game. So after a couple of attempts, we finally beat the tormented version of Trobio. We're going to get a real cool prize here now. We're going to get a tool upgrade. That's right, some of the tools in this game can be modified or upgraded. So the first time we beat him, we got something like the claw mirror. That time we picked up, I think it was the dark mirror, and you combine them together, so when you heal yourself, you end up making a much bigger explosion. I think it deals more damage as well. Now this fight, Lost Garment, was fairly easy once you figured out how to bait him. So I kept trying to create distance, so I would bait him into using that projectile attack, and every time he used that projectile attack, I would try to get in behind him, get in a few attacks, and then run away. And it was just a simple rinse and repeat until he was dead. So he just did the projectile attack again there, got in behind him, we hit him a few times. You can actually get this NPC to help you in a couple of fights in the game. Now, that never happened with me because I think you have to do a lot of things before he will actually help you. And I think one of those things is restoring the hearts to that Cogwork Sentinel. But when it comes to that arena, up in the high halls that everybody complains about, I believe you can actually get Garment to help you in that arena. So once we help Garment to snap out of it again, we get some pretty sad dialogue here. It says, Zaza, let us rest a little, you know? I really hope he doesn't perish. I really hope he's just taking a rest and he's not actually dying. So we went up to the Pinterest's house, and she told us that she has departed to scale Farnham's frigid mount. She wants us to climb up to the top of it, challenge her to a duel. Now, before we do that, it's time we take on one of these super bosses. And we're going to start with a boss here known as Carmelita. This boss is absolutely insane. She is on par with the first singer. Such a class boss fight. Though before we can actually get to Carmelita, we have to go through an expanded version of the Farfields here. But once we make it through all the way, we can access the dream world and we can take her on. She's such an amazing fight. Definitely one of my favourite fights in the game, and one of the hardest fights in the game as well. We came across Sprint Master Swift here when we're trying to locate Carmelita, and this was actually a quest we unlocked. We have to race this guy around the course 3 times to achieve victory. And every time we win, he'll change up the course, he'll make it harder all of the time, so there's a total of 3 courses. The last course is a mean piece of work now, and it did take a lot of attempts to actually achieve victory. But we have to do this if we want to get our hands on a Mask Shard. Now, a great tip about this fight is that if we use our grappling hook and we hit him with it, we'll stun him for a second. It's a great way to just pass him out and get back the lead again, you know. We get a beast shard there for winning the second time. Now, this is the final course that we have to do, and once we achieve victory here, we're going to get a Mask Shard. Now, this course is fairly hard because you have to use your double jumps, you have to use your grappling hook, you have to use your dash, you have to use everything. I'm sure there's much better ways to get around this course. I only managed to do this thanks to my lovely grappling hook ability. So just by the skin of my teeth there, you know. So that was the second last Mask Shard we needed to obtain full health in this game. We finally found Carmelita, but she was old and she was gone slow. But using the power of our needling, we can go into her mind, we can go back in time through her dreams and fight her when she was in her prime to get a very powerful item known as a heart. Now Carmelita is an absolutely amazing boss fight. Before we get to fight her, we have to fight some ads. So basically we just click on challenge here, like we do in many of the boss fights. All of these ads will appear. Now we've fought all of these before, bar these last 2 ads. These are kind of big elite ads. They hit quite hard. But after fighting these, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 times, I got pretty good at taking them out. Once the ads have been disposed of, it was now time for the main fight, Carmelita. Now, this fight is absolutely insane. Her attacks are lethal. You need to use hit and run tactics here. That's how I beat her anyway. If you obtain distance between her, she will throw those shurikens at you. They're fairly easy to dodge, just don't jump too high and dash through them. She'll also jump on the ground and summon spikes. That's easy to dodge too, just jump up into the air and you can float down if you want. Now the best time to attack her is directly after she uses an attack on you. So you are constantly counter-attacking Carmelita all of the time. Now she has a couple of attacks, but it's just that her attacks are very accurate, and more times than not, she tends to land some hits on me. The other thing about Carmelita is sometimes she'll block your attacks. So even if you counter-attack straight after she uses an attack on you, you mightn't actually hit. Now this is just the first phase. You get into the second phase, she speeds up dramatically, her attacks become way more frequent, you know? So you can always think of the first phase as a little bit of a tutorial to get to know Carmelita, you know? Build a relationship with her, learn how to dodge all of her attacks, and then try to defeat her when she goes into overdrive into the second phase. When she lets out that victory cry, that's a great opportunity to get in some attacks. Now I don't really use my silk skills in this fight because I need all of my silk to heal. That's her new attack now in phase number 2 there. She'll go from left to right or right to left of the arena and huge spikes come up from the ground. Again, it's easy enough to dodge if you can see it coming. You just have to double jump up into the air and you'll be fine. I really hope when they release a DLC they will give us an ability to fight these bosses to our heart's content. Maybe like an arena or something like that, similar to God Home for the first Hollow Knight game. So we're now entering her final phase. We call this phase number 3, and as we can see, her attacks are way faster now, way more aggressive. She literally lines up one attack after the next. She doesn't really have any downtime here. So if we want to dish out damage, saving your tools until this phase is a great strategy. I saved most of my cog flies until this phase, and I just started popping them all out then towards the end, and the cog flies really saved the day for me because they did so much damage and I was just trying to survive the onslaught of her attacks. We get a cool cutscene here of cutting her open into little pieces after we've beaten her, and we now get to claim her heart. And that is one of 3 hearts we need to go down and fight the true final boss. So that one is called the Hunter's Heart. It beats steady and strong. Now, in terms of all of the super bosses that you fight in this game, I call them super bosses, the 3 bosses you need to fight to get Bloom, Carmelita, in my opinion, was the hardest one. So we went up to the top of Mount Frey here and we are fighting the Pinstress. Now, she was a fierce hard fight. I really struggled with her and it took me a lot of attempts to actually get her down. The biggest problem I had was actually landing hits, because she just blows all over the place. So I had to change up my tools a little bit, and I put that mirror tool on, so every time she damaged me, a little mirror clone of myself would pop out, and if she touched off those little mirror clones, she would take damage. That cross slash she did was very hard to dodge, because sometimes she'd charge it up and she'd keep it charged until she got close to you, and then she would unleash it. So it's just a very difficult move to get over. And this is basically the whole fight. She doesn't really change up her tactics, she just has a huge health pool. It's a battle of attrition. You just have to get good at dodging all of her attacks. Get in a couple of strikes when you can. Eventually, she went down for me, but it was definitely worth it because she's going to give us a tool that dramatically speeds up the charge up on our powered attack. And that is the attack when you hold down your attack button and you charge up your attack for the powered attack. I also went back into the Wormways and look who I found! My good friend Xylitol. Now Xylitol here wasn't behaving normally. He basically overdosed on the plasmium. So the best thing we could do was to just keep striking him until he finally snapped out of it. Unfortunately, he crumbled up into pieces. Now, don't worry, this was just a clone. The real Xylitol is still up in his main location. I actually found a weave nest here. This was called Weave Nest Card, and this was the weave nest we couldn't access before because we needed to double jump. We can get in here right now. we end up getting a real cool silk skill here. And I think this is the second last silk skill we need to get another achievement. This skill is absolutely amazing. It's called Sharp Dart. Very similar to the Shadow Dash ability or the Sharp Shadow ability from the first Hollow Knight. And I actually used Sharp Shadow in the first game to beat the Pure Vessel at the end of Godhome. That's how good the ability is. Xylitol gave us another quest to go around and find more samples of Placium. But this time, we had to extract it from the enemies, not from its actual flower source. When the quest was done, we got back an incredible item. We got back, I think it was a plasmium gland that we got back. It just meant that we didn't have to go to him anymore to get plasmium reserves. Now this is something I haven't really used during my playthrough of SilkSong, but it can be a very powerful item, and if you want to give yourself some extra pieces of health before going into a fight, it's a great tool to use. I finally got revenge on that big beast as well that I had to run from the start of the video, so it was nice to destroy that. It just dropped the beast shard. Unfortunately, I thought it might drop something a bit better. I also found more of these big void masses as well, so that was just another void mass that I destroyed. I now had enough money to finally get my own personal spa, and that was going to go into my lovely Bell home. I also had another quest here too called the Hidden Hunter. That is basically a boss fight that we get to do in just a couple of minutes. But first it was time to jump into our lovely personal spa and give it a go. Look how cozy our little Bell home was. I also found the Green Prince back in Greymore, and he was beside another Cogwork Sentinel. The great thing about this is that we can actually use our needling to get into the dream world, so we can explore Verdania when it was a lovely lush place before the Silk Mother went mad. Now Verdania is quite the challenging environment, lots of enemies that we can fight there, and every time we die we have to play the song again to go back into Lost Verdania. That was a bit irritating, but look, we got there eventually. So there's a big puzzle that you have to do in this place to get to the boss to fight it, okay? There's a couple of gauntlets we have to go through, and there's a handful of arenas we have to go through as well. We have to find all of these light particles, and once we've found a number of light particles, it will open the way to the last boss fight. So that was like one of the first light particles found there. So there's loads of those little mini games that you have to do, you know, and you have to follow the light particles and activate them all before they expire. Now these are all easy ones. Eventually we'll have to do little mini arenas to get more of the light particles as well. Remember those cool Cogwork dancers that we had to fight when we first got to the Citadel? Well, what we're going to experience here is going to be a much harder version of that fight. Now before we can get to experience that fight, there's a couple of other fights we have to do. But first, we're going to play our needling. We're going to summon up this shrine. Now, there's an awful lot of light sources we can get from this shrine, which is absolutely amazing. So this really excels our progress in Lost Verdania. But even with all of those light orbs gotten, we still have to do some of the boss fights. This one is called Pale Stag. Now this fight is fairly simple, but at the same time it's quite the frustrating fight. The boss will summon projectiles, and they will either go left or right, depending on where you're standing. Every time you get close to the boss, it will teleport away. So you need to be really quick, get in a few hits and then retreat. Now I summoned a couple of cogflies here in the hope they would lock onto the boss and hit it. They did just that, but if I ever have to repeat this fight, I'll come back with some projectiles instead, so I can just throw pins at it or something like that. When I beat this fight, I got lots of light orbs, and I think I got enough there to unlock the final boss fight. But before I could go there, I had to do another arena fight. Now these enemies were quite difficult to deal with because they would lock onto you and then they would sprint to your location. So you kinda had to time their attacks and you had to dodge at the last second. Those mantis looking yokes that threw projectiles at me, they almost killed me a handful of times at this arena. This was probably one of the hardest arenas I've done so far in the game. It was fierce hard. Between those gecko frogs, between those mantis yokes, their attacks were just fierce hard to dodge. I got very lucky at the end there. I just kept spamming my attack and I managed to deflect all of the melee attacks of the previous mantis enemy. It was now time for the main boss fight of Lost Verdania. It was the Green Prince along with some sort of spectral clone. I think that clone was its partner that turned itself into a Cogwork dancer for the sake of the technological advance of the Citadel back in the day. This fight, as you can see, is way more intense, way faster than that of the first time we took on the Cogwork dancers. even their second phase. Now this fight is more or less the same, it's just faster, except when they do this special move. It's basically like a tornado, and it almost does a full 360 turn, so you have to be real nimble when that happens. Now just like the fight we done over in the Citadel, all of the phases from this fight are more or less the same. When they go into their third phase, they will start attacking without being in sync, so it just gets a tad bit harder that way as well. But other than that, as long as you keep your focus up, pay attention to where they're going to actually go, you won't have a whole lot of trouble with them. I didn't anyway. Every time they do that big attack, where they spam the screen just like that, that's a great opportunity to heal if your health is low. Because if you have the quick heal activated, you will have enough time to pop in a heal before they get back to their usual shenanigans. When you beat this fight, you will get a heart, but this particular heart isn't listed as a main quest. Despite that, you can actually use the heart you get for this fight to substitute one of the hearts from the main quest. So if you find yourself struggling on the other fights, and if you find yourself being able to beat this one, you can actually use this heart as one of the main three, which is pretty cool. The heart we pick up here is called the Conjoined Heart. It beats sharp and clear. It was now time to go on and complete this quest here that was in the Farfields. This was the invitation we got from Billy. Now look, this guy was fairly simple enough to do. He just spammed traps all over the place, dived into the ground, and he dashed from left to right occasionally. We had our lovely cog flies, so we summoned up a few of those, got some poison on, hit him with the needle a few times, and he went down easy enough. Once we were finished with the Farfields, we went back to check on the 12th Architect because I hadn't went back to her since Act 3, and I found that she had passed away, which was a bit sad. I did pick up a pristine core beside her though, and that gave a whopping 220 shell shards. I would absolutely take those. I also went back to the area where I got my grappling hook and I managed to fight another big void mass. That completed another quest for me, which was great. At this stage in the game, we were getting very close to getting 100% completion. That was another mask added to our lovely health pool. There was just 4 mask shards left we had to get, and a lot of those were locked behind quests. So we're just going to get one right now from completing the quest, which was great. We're also going to go back to the Weave Nest here. We're going to talk to Eva, and we're going to bind Eva, and I think this was possible because of all of the memory lockets that we found. Because we're going to bind Eva, it's going to give us a very powerful passive ability. Every time we sit on a bench, Eva will activate, and she will put our silk right up to maximum. It is so handy, especially if you're stuck on a boss, and you're going to fight that boss over and over again. Now, I decided to go back up to the top of the Citadel here, and the hand that Lace cut off during our last fight was actually here. I managed to bind this and I got a new silk skill, and this was the final silk skill I needed to unlock another achievement. This was called the Pale Nails. It's actually a real nice skill to use. You summon 3 big nails and they will home in on a target and strike through. It was now time to do some of the hardest platforming this game has to offer. In my personal opinion, not as hard as the White Palace, but still very difficult. You had to use your grappling hook a lot to get up to the very top. And when I get up to the very top, you get a pretty cool surprise. You don't get any great item or super powerful tool. You just get a nice little surprise at the top, and that's what we're going to do right now. This took me the bones of a couple of hours to do because I kept failing these bits and I kept falling down to the bottom. And if you touch of any one of those turns, you have to start all the way at the bottom again. So it was very hard to kind of stay motivated to keep doing this, you know. Now eventually you will reach certain levels where it'll give you a platform that you can stand on. So if you do fail a jump, it'll start you on that platform. But as you can see, you don't get a whole lot of them. Now eventually we will get a quest where we kind of have to come up here, you know, to complete the quest. But the great thing about coming up here now is that you unlock a shortcut. So if you need to come back up here in the future, you can just take the shortcut. You won't have to go through the agonizing platform that I'm going through right now. Trust me, it's agonizing. When we got to the top, we found some bugs here, totally harmless, but we killed them just so we could add them to the Hunter's Journal. I ran over to the very left. I got some dialogue here to say, out here lies the endless waste. If I cross them now, Farnham shall fall to a black fate of my making. So this is where Hornet will go once, hopefully, she saves the day. Over to the very right, we came across a house here. This is called the Nameless Town. When I played my needling, something dropped out for me to take. It was called the Surface Memento. I thought that was pretty cool. I went back to Mount Fae, and I used my super jump and was able to get another mask shard. Now at this stage of the game, I was actually fairly stuck on where I needed to go to get the rest of the collectibles, so just so everyone knows, to be fair, I pulled up a guide, and I just followed that to get everything else. I also needed to get another mask shard up here as well, and I never would have found this location. It was well hidden. You needed a super jump to get in there. This place was known as Bright Vein. It was a fair cool location. So we start off by using the super jump, and those ads there get absolutely huge. Turn into giant ads instead. Basically, we just have to grapple along these, get up to new heights, and eventually we can reach an area where we can grab the final mask shard, and that's going to give us 10 pieces of health then in total, which is absolutely great. Once we're finished with the mask shards, I then put up a guide on how to find all of the Spool fragments to increase our silk bar. Now, there was a handful of fragments that I hadn't come across just yet, so I very quickly nipped around the map and grabbed a lot of them. This one was down in the Whispering Vault. We had to make the elevator go back up, go all the way around, get to the very bottom, and grab this one. I also pulled a lever here as well, and what fell out was an item I could have got ages ago, but I just never came across it. It was called the Surgeon's Key. Using this, we can open up some gates here. This is going to give us access to a really cool boss battle. This actually would have been a tough battle if I did it much earlier in the video. Now when we complete this fight, we are going to get a silk heart, and that's going to be the last one. That means every time we strike an enemy, we'll get back even more silk. And that's great for us because it just means we can use our abilities a lot more and we can heal a lot more frequently. Now my cog flies went absolute mince of this boss. This was the very first time I fought it. I didn't have a whole lot of difficulty, to be fair. I thought the boss was absolutely hilarious, especially when it started firing ads out of his stomach. I just thought it was funny. Occasionally the boss will summon these spears that come up out of the ground, and then they'll fly back into the ground, so we just have to dodge them. At this stage of the game, I kept telling myself, how much more content have they packed into this game? You know, how many more boss fights do I have to do to achieve 100% in-game completion? Because every time you teach yourself you fully explore the zone, you then open up a guide or you read something on Reddit or you watch a YouTube video and you find out that you haven't. There's some other secret that you just haven't come across. So beating this fight was absolutely amazing. I wasn't expecting to get a silk heart at all. So it was really nice to nab that there and then. Once we were finished with this location, which is called the White Ward, it was time to locate the rest of the Spool fragments. Now at this moment in time, and this recording may change after I do a couple of more checks, when I fully complete this game it'll say 99% completion, just so you know. That's because I'm missing one Spool fragment. I've double checked all 18 locations, it's not there, I think it's bugged. I purchased a dice tool off Grindle there. That has a chance to nullify any attack that my character takes on. I also got a cross summons when I sat on a bench over in the far fields. This gave me access to a new zone here in Greymore. Yes, we're back in Greymore again. And we now get to fight the Court of Crows. I don't like these enemies at all, so I didn't have a whole lot of fun fighting these ads. But I have to say, when the boss came down, it was just such a wacky boss. I couldn't help myself but just to laugh, as I had tried my best to dodge all of its attacks. Definitely one of the funniest bosses in the game. Now I was using the pale nails for this fight, I just wanted to try it out, and oh my goodness, it was so good when it comes to wiping out those aerial critters, because it just locked onto them, hit them a couple of times and they perished. Now this boss is known as the Claw Father. It has a huge amount of HP. Its attacks are very well telegraphed, easy enough to dodge most of its attacks, just gotta watch out for its big bump and its bounce attacks. Clawfather will occasionally summon more ads as the fight progresses, but to be fair, because her nail was fully upgraded, it didn't take a whole lot of swings to wipe them out, you know? Just like many of the other battles that we were doing, this was a battle of attrition. If we got too greedy with attacks, our health would whittle down very quickly, we'd end up being killed. Now sometimes we can get a good stun lock on the boss, which is great. When that happens, we can dish huge amounts of damage on the boss. We're still using the crest of the Wanderer. I don't think I'm ever going to swap out that crest again. I just love the speed in which my attacks are. Towards the end of the fight, the boss got stunned, and I don't know if this was a bug or not, but the boss would just not get up, and so I just kept attacking and attacking and attacking, and eventually the boss finally perished. And that was one more item added to the Hunter's Journey, which is pretty cool. All of the crawbirds flew away. They knew who the real hunter was around here. I got the craw memento. I also picked up the craw bell from this location as well. Now, craw bell is a great item. You can install that onto your home in Bellheart, and it will generate money over time. Rosaries, real handy. I also picked up the 3-fold pin from Greymore as well. I then went to the Marrow, and I completed a puzzle here by hitting all of the targets at once. I then had an option to give my curve cloth to this ant. He took it and ran away. But if you leave the area and come back, you get an upgraded version called the curved sickle. Now, I've never really used this item before, but apparently this is meant to be an extremely overpowered tool, especially fighting large bosses. I managed to find another door here I can open my needling down boil water. Never came across this before. This was called the Weave Nest Burglin. Inside I picked up an item called the Ruined Tool. Now I believe there's 3 different places where you can upgrade this tool. Depending on where you get it upgraded or where you get it repaired, it will work in a different way. I got it repaired up at Mount Fae, and what I got back was called a silk shot. Basically, it was a gun, and it would use your silk every time you want to shoot it. It was a fair school item now, I have to say. So I decided to equip the weapon and use it a few times to see how good it actually was. And we get to use this weapon in a couple of fights that are coming up, which is pretty cool. So I went back to the high halls, I went into that door I opened up with a simple key, and I managed to get myself a new tool called the Rosary Cannon. And it's just a tool that fires out rosaries. Apparently it doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but it was still cool to get it. So we now had 55 out of 57 tools got in this game so far. To get the next tool, we had to go back to the blasted steps, up to the sands of Korok, and we had to super jump up into this area here. This area had very difficult platforming sections. Once we got around it and unlocked the shortcut, we could then take on the boss of this area. Fighting this boss is called the Vault Rib. It will drop a tool that we can use. So this is just another boss that we had to fight, another boss I never would have found on my own. I needed the guide to bring me here. Now this fight was fairly simple enough, you just had to be quick. It would summon pillars of light or pillars of electricity. You had to get out of dodge straight away from those. It would also summon circles of electricity as well, and they were fairly simple to dodge as well. We did get hit a few times, but look, it wasn't the worst fight in the game. It just took me 2 attempts to get it done, and that was it. Another entry added to the Hunter's Journal, and another tool for us. Now, these are tools I don't really use because I was happy with my poisonous cogflies, but if I ever decide to do another run in the future, I might switch into one of these tools to see how good they actually are. So, I found another tool here, again, in boil water. This was called the Quick Sling. When I found that tool, that was 57 out of 57 tools obtained in the game. I was absolutely delighted. One step closer to 100% completion. It was now time to take on another boss to obtain another heart. And this was the place that we found up in the sands of Korok before. So I used my needling, went into the dream world, and we had to fight a couple of gauntlets here to get up into the final boss. Now, if you died on any of these gauntlets, you have to start again from scratch. That was the irritating thing about this fight. But if you got up to the very last gauntlet and then you died, you would only have to fight one gauntlet, not 5 or 6 of them, before you get to fight the last boss. So that was the saving grace. So this again was another battle of attrition. Now, you were given plenty of opportunities to heal between each gauntlet, because once you finished a little arena, you had to leave, jump up a couple of steps into the next arena. But every time you jump up a couple of steps, there'd be kind of enemies hovering around the place. You could strike them to get back some silk, so you can get some heals in. Once we were finished with all of these little arenas, it was finally time to super jump up to the last boss. Now, out of all of the heart bosses, I'm going to call them, that we have to fight, this was definitely the easiest boss. Now, to be fair, it was actually harder getting to him. This one was Crust King Khan. Now, all of his attacks are very well telegraphed. You can see him coming a mile off because you can see all the debris coming out. I did get hit a few times because I just got too greedy with attacks. What you have to watch out for is when he lands on top of you. But that's all he does. Now, he will speed up his attacks the more you strike him, so it's just a matter of dodge, attack, dodge, attack. If health gets low, just give yourself a couple of heals and you'll be fine. I needed to fight this guy a total of 2 times, and that was it. Once this battle was finished, there was just one more heart boss we had to fight to have claimed all of the hearts to progress into the final tier, of this challenge. It was really nice to get that heart, another cool cutscene there of cutting the boss to pieces, and picking up the heart of the Crust King himself. This heart was called the Encrusted Heart. It beats deep and slow. I went back to Fleetopia to double check if I got all of the Spool fragments from there, you know, because I just couldn't find the 18th Spool fragment. I'm pretty sure it's just bugged out of the game because I've double and triple checked all of the areas you're meant to get them in. Just by chance, I found a quest here. I had to run around and find this mushroom. This is called Mr. Mushroom. He's in the first Hollow Knight game. Every time we find him, Harlan asks him to come with questions. She asks him for advice, but he always gives totally weird answers. So you have to find him a total of 5 or 6 times in different locations. And when you do this, it just unlocks a little bit of an extra ending for us the next time we clear the game. Once we're finished with Mr. Mushroom, he blasts off up into the sky. We might see him in the next Hollow Knight game when it gets released in a decade. But you know what? I don't mind waiting that long if you're going to get a game as good and as polished as this one. It's now time to fight the next hard boss. But before we can get in there, we have to fight this Guardian here. Now this Guardian is a tough fight. This one is called Shrine Guardian Set. It took me 3 goes to actually beat this guy. He's quite fast, but he is one fair school fight. And I really enjoyed fighting Seth. Now Seth wasn't like other boss fights. He didn't have any big dazzling moves. He was just very quick, quite lethal. He would teleport near you, he'd swing at you a few times, he'd throw his shield at you. A lot of moves you kind of had to dodge, you know. Once we got set into his second phase, he started to consecutively strike the ground with his shield. And every time he did that, it would let out this little explosion. So I couldn't really get close to him during that time. The best I could do was to just keep going the way I was going, dodge his attacks, and counter-attack to the best of my ability. Eventually, we managed to deal the fatal blow, knocked him into the water, and on we went to fight the last heart boss. This boss was pretty cool, but in terms of all of the heart bosses we fought so far, in my opinion, definitely the weakest. Nothing compared to the likes of Carmelita, or even going through all of the arenas to get up into the Crust King. Now this fight was hard in terms of where you could actually go to do damage. Now the first phase is easy enough, you know, she will charge you from one side of the room to the other, so you just gotta jump over that. If you get too close, she will release a big explosion there. She's also got blades for here, and she won't hesitate to use those against you. After receiving a couple of bits of damage, she'll kick it up into phase number 2. And what's happening here now is that you basically have to fight her primarily from the air. This can be quite difficult because she's always throwing projectiles at you. And if she's not throwing projectiles, she'll try to ram you as well, you know. Now that's actually the best time to get her. When she's finished her attack, you just have to try to bounce on her head, hit her a couple of times, and then just back off. Maybe get in a heal if you have some extra silk. Hit her with a spear or 2, or hit her with whatever abilities you have active. Now, it took me 3 attempts to get this fight done, and that was it then. That was all of the hearts fully obtained. We are now very close to fully 100%ing this game. So when we woke up out of the dream, we managed to get the last heart item. This was the Pollen Heart. It beats faint and fast. Now, there's still a few things we have to do here before we talk to the snail. We're going to use our super jump inside the chapel here, where all of the snails reside. We're going to make our way down, and we're going to get the final crest here to unlock another achievement. And this one is called Crest of the Shaman. And this is a unique crest where instead of equipping tools to it, you can equip silk skills. Now, it's not something I used, but the moveset was pretty cool, where every time you strike your weapon, little energy blades will come out. So it was a cool setup, and eventually I will try all of these setups, absolutely. It was now finally time for the ritual to take place, so we can go back into our memories and get the bloom. What we're getting here now is a real nice backstory of Hornet. She starts off as a little infant, and we're going to go through all these really cool events of Hornet getting trained, Hornet getting advice, Hornet talking to her mother. It's just real nice to get that before we get into the very end of the game. Ignore them, daughter. They're whispers. Greater, grander, weaver, guardian, queen. Those are their desires, not your own. Certainly not mine. So it's just nice dialogue here of the mother telling Hard to go and live the way she wants. Her life is her own. Here is another cool cutscene where Harlot is training with this wasp looking or bee looking NPC. And the NPC says, yet still you need to be faster. In time they will come for you, those who fear your nature and those seeking to claim it. And that's what happened with Farloom. You were captured because the grandmother Silk wanted your abilities. Now here is a blast from the past. If you've played the first Hollow Knight game, this is an NPC you get to encounter after you've beaten that horrendously difficult Traitor Lord in the Queen's Garden. This NPC is going to give us the first light, and that's what we need to go down into the void to rescue Lace finally. Now if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate you. You are absolutely amazing. And as I said before, the reason why this video is so long is because I wanted to show my experience. I wanted to show all of the fights that I had to go through, everything I had to get to fully 100% this game. So we woke up with the Everbloom equipped it. We can now go into the void, no problem at all. So brace yourselves people, because we're now entering straight into the final act of this game. Technically it's still Act 3, but this is going to be the final bout. So we went back down here at the bottom of the abyss. I cut out all the exploration part because we've seen it all before. Lace has popped up again. Now this is just kind of the shadow of Lace. Just who you hoping you'll find down there, Spider? An alien child and a silk-starved beast. If so, I'm afraid we may sorely disappoint. What waits below is me no longer. So we're going to have to do a little bit of persuading here now to snap Lace out of it and get her to come back up to the surface again, you know? Now this fight that we're going to do is an extremely hard fight. But here's the big question. Was it harder than the first Sinner? Was it harder than Carmelita? Because I would put those fights up there into the top 5 of hardest fights in the game, you know? And a lot of people will have different opinions on it. Some people say the fight is unfair. I never really felt any sort of unfairness with this fight. I think you just really have to be on your feet with it. You need to have your wits about you. You have to maintain focus from the very start of the fight to the very end. Brace yourselves, it is finally time for the final battle to take place, and this battle will not be easily won. As we can see, we've got the lovely grandmother Silk there. She doesn't look too great now, to be fair, but she's not the threat down here. Oh no, the threat is going to pop up right in front of us. What we have here is Lost Lace. Now this fight is extremely hard. She has a lot of her abilities that she retained from the second fight that we did with her, except she's just way faster and most of her attacks have some sort of void abilities. So when she scoots through the ground, tends just come up from the ground, very difficult to dodge if you don't hit her right on the head at the very start. Her counter attacks are absolutely devastating. The biggest problem with this fight I found is that she can teleport right up into your face and hit you for immense damage. Now normally when she does teleport, you do have like a half a second to a second to get out of the way. And that's how I approached this fight. I kept my distance and I only ever attacked when I could, when I had the opportunity. So normally I attacked during the middle of her attack and I was always sure that I wasn't going to get hit in return. When she's done that void tendril, it's not a great opportunity to get in a few hits as well. You're always only going to get in a few hits. If you get greedy, she will either parry you and then hit you for 2 masks, or she'll just retaliate with a regular attack and hit you for a lot of damage as well. Now, we're recovering in here right now with the reserve bind, so we still have that to use. We have our lovely cog flies. We're not going to touch off those until we get into the final phase. And there's a good reason for that. Because when you get to the final phase, there's just stuff going on all over the place. Which you'll see that in a couple of minutes anyway. Now, this is kind of the second phase where she starts to summon up more stuff from the ground. So she will either summon stuff from the ground or she'll jump up into the air and blobs will come out of her, and those blobs will turn into huge blades that you have to dodge. She will also summon these homing projectiles. Now, the great thing about the homing projectiles is you don't have to sprint. If you just casually walk, that is also enough to dodge them. So I was reading reviews on this, and a lot of people were complaining that when they were dodging those projectiles, they were sprinting straight into Lost Late. So don't do that. Just walk normally. That's enough to dodge all of those homing projectiles. Just take a nice stroll. If she pops up, just dash the other way. You'll still be dodging the projectiles. Now, what we have here is a transitional phase, and those big, huge mass of blades will go from left to right, and then from right to left. Easy enough to dodge. What we're going to see now is a hardened version of Lace. This is the final phase. So we're going to start by summoning a couple of cogflies. She becomes much faster now, more lethal. But we can still get in a lot of attacks when she is doing some of her attacks. Now, I end up taking a lot of damage at the start of this phase because I kind of started to panic a bit. Every time I got into the last phase, I started to panic. And we all know once panic sets in, the mistakes start to happen. Every time she did a laugh like that, that was my cue to get some damage done. Now, I had one piece of health left. It was real panic stations. I used the heal, but I also used my reserve heal as well. That put me right back up to fairly healthy. Despite the fact that we were on the final phase, she was still fierce hard to deal with. The best advice I give when it comes to doing this battle, to have a little bit of patience, don't run around too much, dodge when you need to, just don't sprint aimlessly because you're going to end up running into something that's going to hurt you. When she does all of those charged attacks, that is a great opportunity to get in a few strikes as well. So at the end of the day, all we can do is dodge, attack, rinse and repeat. The cog flies finished off the job for me. They're such a great and handy tool. We have finally cleared the game, yay! 100% completion. Well, technically as of this moment, 99% completion. But I'm telling you right now, that last piece of silk that we need to extend our silk bar, it's bugged out. It's not there. Trust me when I say that. It's not there. It was now time to pick up Lace and get out of here. We needed to save her after all. What was really cool about this was, it was like a little bit of a nice family reunion towards the end, because the Silk Mother gives us all her silk, which empowers us to actually do a big super jump out of this place. I'm now not going to talk anymore, just enjoy the ending. To be continued. Fabulous. Well, I for one cannot wait to experience more of this game. What an adventure. 78 hours, 14 minutes and 21 seconds is what it took me to 99% complete the game. I'm telling you right now, that spool fragment doesn't exist. I did collect all 18 pieces of them, but it just didn't register one. So hopefully they'll fix that eventually. Thanks a million everyone for taking the time to watch this video. I had such fun playing this game. I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye for now. So just a quick update here, I actually was missing one spool fragment, and it was here at the very start of the freaking game. I'm just going to show you what happened here. You see, I thought the fragment was in the room just up here. I didn't realize there was a wall you had to break. I thought this particular room right here was the room with the fragment, which I had to break open a wall here, and then you go into the next room, and look what's there. The final fragment. I was so happy with this. Now we officially have 100% game completion. So just to make it official, I went and fought the final boss again, because you actually unlock a trophy when you complete the game at 100% completion. So that's what we just done here. Thanks everyone again for taking the time to watch the video. I truly appreciate you. What an amazing game. Hollow Knight, SilkSong. This has to be one of my favourite games of all time. There will always be a special place in my heart for Hollow Knight, but this game just done it so much better. Was it a harder game? Absolutely. But the difficulty is what made the ending worth it. The struggle, the climb, you know? And we even get a really cool screensaver here at the end, where we have Lace's Needle and Hornet's Needle. Thanks again everyone. I'll see you in the next one.